if you want a global education, if you want an education to prepare you for the challenges of the 21st century, climate change, health disparities, educational innovation, UMass Boston is for you.
Speaking, you use the term, that's what academics do, attractive price point. For people like me, that means the tuition is low. So what is the tuition here at UMass Boston,
I'll
Chancellor?
get you the exact
What's the number, rough number?
Well, let me tell you, Jim, you're a graduate of Columbia University. It's not $90,000 a year like at Columbia. It's in the order of 14, 15,000. And with the financial aid we're able to package, I think we're offering an extraordinary educational opportunity at a competitive price. Our students leave UMass Boston with much lower debt ratios than kids around the country.
We're talking to Marcelo Suárez-Orozco, who's the Chancellor of UMass Boston. You mentioned climate change, and it appears, this is coincidental, virtually every guest on the show today is going to the Vatican. And we didn't know until late last night that this Vatican conference in part was organized by you. Could you tell us, I mean, the governor is going, the mayor is going, she's not with us today, the governor is, the former EPA administrator is going. Tell us a little bit about what this is about.
Thank you.
You got a whole brochure here if you want to hold it up.
Thank you. Here it is.
Go. There you go.
Very nicely done.
Made in Boston.
Okay.
Thank you.
What's happening there?
Look, this is the challenge of our times. Unchecked climate change is putting at risk all planetary systems, all living systems. We are bringing together the leading climate scientists, the leading social scientists, leading mayors and governors from around the world. Democracy is fragile. Democracy at the federal level is very, very challenged today. Where democracy lives, where democracy thrives today, is in cities. It's in cities and at the level of the different states. The idea here is to bring mayors and governors from the most vulnerable hotspots in the world, whether it's Amazonia, whether it's in Asia, whether it's in Africa, with mayors and governors that are putting in place best practices around what we call MAST, M-A-S-T, I call it MAST for mass, that is mitigation, adaptation, societal transformation, to get us in front of the most wicked shocks. Climate change will continue to disrupt human and all living systems over the next 2-3 generations.
You know, how did this come about, briefly? Were you hanging out with the Pope, or what? How did this come about, seriously? Particularly your involvement. How did that come about?
I'm a member of the Pontifical Academy.
What's that?
It's the oldest academy in the world. Galileo was the founder. You know what happened to him?
Yeah, he got in trouble.
So I have to be very careful. I have to be very careful. And I serve in what is an entirely secular. This is not part of the hierarchy of the church. We report to Pope Francis, and my colleague in this endeavor is the great atmospheric scientist Ram Ramanathan at UC San Diego. He's at the Scripps Institute of Oceanography. Ram and I have been partners for decades now. Ram discovered the heat trapping functions of the CFCs. He's one of the iconic climate scientists in the world.
You know, by the way, before we leave this topic, Bill McKibben, who I would argue is one of the most important environmentalists in America, if not the world, has said to us repeatedly, while we're often critical of the Pope, that what the Pope has written and said about the climate is about as important as anything said by anybody on the planet.
Yeah. Let's change topics for a second.
And if I may, this is all entirely funded by philanthropic foundations. Not a cent of UMass Boston money.
Let's get back from Rome for a second, Chancellor, and talk about probably the biggest story in the country right now, the protests going on college campuses across the country about what has happened in Gaza, and a lot of claims of anti-Semitism and not claims, anti-Semitism right on the campuses there. You came from UCLA a few years ago. There was a very violent situation there last night involving the tents and the protests there. What is going on here at UMass?
Look around. Our students, like I think students around the country, have a strong commitment to learning more about the issues at stake. They want to, the students I talk with, they want to learn, they want to understand, they want to engage. We have, through the extraordinary endeavors of the faculty, the Dean of Students, so many of our colleagues, maintain very good channels of communication, and we believe two things are true. Freedom of speech is to be respected, especially for us in a public university. At Jim's alma mater, that's a private university, there are other parameters on matters pertinent to that theme. So that's true. Our students have a moral compass. They want to learn. They're moved by what's unfolding. The other truth here is that all forms of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are, to me, personally, abhorrent. Abhorrent. And I reject them with every fiber in my body. I think that what happened at UCLA, Marjorie, is, you know, it was Mike Tyson, that great thinker, who said, everybody's got a plan until you get hit in the teeth. What happened at UCLA is the administration was hit in the teeth. And they were not prepared. They misread the room, the quad in this case. And we saw a just horrific set of dynamics that you have no place in our places of higher education.
You know, I'm sorry, go ahead, Marjorie.
There are many people who believe that what's going on here, there was a lot of violence at UCLA last night and yesterday, but that what's going on here across the country is less about some violence that may occur and more about very wealthy donors and the Republican Party that is trying to turn this into a whole discussion about anti-Semitism, ignoring the Gaza part. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think each campus, you know, Tolstoy begins Anna Karenina with that beautiful line, every family's happy the same way, but each family's unhappy the same in its own way. I think in each campus you have a distinct set of issues. I do think more broadly that the invasion of big money into higher education, especially when there is a quid pro quo, is extraordinarily threatening to academic freedom, to the autonomy that the faculty and the university should have on all matters pertinent to scholarly, academic, humanistic endeavors. So I think that that's a broader concern that needs to be very, very directly addressed.
Chancellor Marcelo Suárez-Orozco, speaking of demonstrations, I saw a sign when I got to the campus this morning, a rally in about 9 minutes close by on the campus, and the sign says, we're demanding a truly anti-racist and health-promoting university, and we are aware of the issues that have arisen in the Africana Studies Department, where there are claims by, I think, 3 faculty members about retaliation, in response to bringing attention to structural racism here, hostility towards the department, and a whole host of things. How do you respond to the claims? And I believe there are complaints filed with the Mass Commission against discrimination. How do you respond to those involved there?
Thank you. We are completely and remain committed to the expansion and investment in our Africana Studies department under my leadership. First ever in the University of Massachusetts system special assistant for Black life. First ever. First ever standing commission for restorative justice in the University of Massachusetts system. Ombudsperson. We've just are in the midst of finishing a cluster hire for Africana Studies. That's an investment of over $1 million. We've recruited 4 professors. That's a gold standard in terms of recruiting and rebuilding of Africana Studies. New director for the Trotter Institute. So, talk is cheap. I walk the walk. Talk is cheap. I cannot comment, Jim, on personnel matters that are ongoing.
You know, we mentioned UCLA, Chancellor, a minute ago, and when we first met you, one of the things we talked about was, I think, at least from about 3,000 miles away, to me, the most important work you did there, partnering with public schools in Los Angeles. Yeah. Are you contemplating, are you in the midst of I know you've met with people like the mayor and Superintendent Skipper. Is a comparable kind of partnership in the works here with the Boston Public Schools?
So we're beginning a journey. We're beginning to, in a more meaningful way, create a network of university-assisted K-12 schools. And we believe here in a neighborly ethic. We believe that we need to start here in our front yard, in our backyard. So the first partner here is the school right here, next to us, BCLA McCormick. We've signed, the mayor announced in the State of the City, a partnership where the university and the school, the district, will endeavor to create the supports and the mechanisms to fundamentally address the inequalities in opportunities to learn and create a pipeline for students from here, our local communities, into UMass Boston and more broadly the University of Massachusetts system.
And is the expectation that McCormick is just the first of many?
Yes.
Okay.
The idea is to grow a network of university-assisted schools.
We're talking to UMass Boston Chancellor Marcelo Suárez-Orozco. I want to ask you, we've talked to you a lot previously about immigration issues in the United States, and there have been recent polls, I think, that surprised lots of people, finding that significant numbers of Americans, including independents and Democrats, not just Republicans, are okay with former President Trump's plans, should he be reelected, to deport millions of people who are in the country that came across the border without papers. And also, they seem to be okay with these detention camps. What do you make of that?
It breaks my heart. I came to our country as a kid, 17 years old. I had nothing. And this is the country that opened its arms to me. I went to community college. I went to night school. Went to work, went to learn English, and that's the America I phenomenologically know firsthand. That's the America that welcomed me, a kid escaping the fascist generals in Argentina. Let me also now speak as somebody who has devoted over 30 years of my life to the study of migration. The details are ugly and surprising, but let me give you a general rule, Marjorie. We always love immigrants looking backwards. In the here and now, there's always panic, moral panic, demographic panic, linguistic panic, cultural panic, economic panic. That was true 150 years ago in the great city of Boston. That was true when the dominant narrative was the Eastern European Jews, the Irish, the Italians, they're never going to assimilate. They're never going to adapt to our ways of life. Always looking backwards. It's photoshopped. It's very glossy. It's very pretty. We have nostalgia. In the here and now, what were the cases against the Italians, for example, the Irish? They're never going to adapt. The Italians are never going to learn English. They're never going to become true Americans in spirit. we look back now and we see how misplaced and how distorted. So the grammar is the same. You change, you white out. This is my generation. You white out Italians, Irish, and Eastern Europeans, and you put in Latin Americans, you put in Caribbeans, you put in Africans, you put in Muslim immigrants. And it's the same grammar. The story is almost identical.
So I have one last thing for you. When we bid you farewell in about a minute or two, we're going to invite listeners, including people who are here, to answer the question about whether or not a college education is worth it in 2024. And I know your answer is, if you're going to go to college, this is the place to go. Step back from that. Is a college degree in general worth it in 2024, Chancellor?
Today, more than ever. The crisis of democracy, the crisis of climate, the crisis of health, the crisis of civility are all crises that flow from the failures of the education system.
Okay. I have one last thing, Chancellor. I was talking earlier to some staff members. We were all looking out at the fantastic view, and we thought that there is really one thing missing that maybe this could be named for you. Maybe a few Adirondack chairs out there, a couple of piers, maybe a little sand, a little beach, a few jet skis. What do you think? Maybe like a covered beer garden out there right in the water when the weather gets warm out here. What do you think?
Okay.
We call that Orozco Memorial Beach.
I would call it the Egan Memorial Beach.
No hablo Orozco, but I'm in for the beer garden.
Absolutely.
And also we could have a little stand for Casamigos, a little tequila, a little, just for cultural variety.
Absolutely.
Chancellor, we really appreciate you having us today. We're big fans of UMass Boston, and thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And have a great time in the Vatican.
Thank you.
Okay, we've been speaking with UMass Boston Chancellor Marcelo Suárez-Orozco, and he's not averse to my idea of a little beach out here at the Dorchester campus of UMass, where you can watch the planes go over. And, wouldn't you like to
have
come
a
there?
pop or two? I know.
Jet ski? I can see you on a jet ski out there, Jim.
Really good on a jet
Okay,
ski,
coming up, we're asking the question that Jim just asked to the Chancellor, and you can call or text us at 877-301-8970. What is a college degree worth these days, with the money going up and up and up, even here at UMass Boston, which is incredibly priced compared to a lot of other schools? How do you value a bachelor's degree in 2024? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the UMass Boston campus on the water in Dorchester.
The ongoing debate around kids and smartphones. One parent from the UK is calling for a radical solution.
We would favour a child-friendly phone that essentially doesn't have open access internet, doesn't have these apps on them.
Her idea is winning support from parents worldwide and from governments in Europe. That story next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Comcast, offering Xfinity Internet, designed to provide a connection for home networks so everyone can be online at once, even during peak hours. More information at xfinity.com. And MBA Builders, partnering with clients to help bring the home they envision to life through their design-build approach. MBA Builders, building relationships. Learn more at buildwithmba.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browley. We're broadcasting live from University Hall at UMass Boston. We're back at the library on Tuesday. The mayor joins us for an hour on Tuesday. And at 1 o'clock today at UMass Boston, the governor joins us in person to take our questions and yours. You just heard from the Chancellor, Marcelo Suárez-Orozco. Now until the top of the hour, I want to spend time hearing from you about the role that universities play in the present day. Essentially, the question is quite simple. Do you believe a college degree is worth it in 2024? If you don't, why not? And if you do, why? The number is 877-301-8970 is always the call or text. And if you're here and would like to give us your opinion, if you go back to that table that says Politics IRL, Lisa has her hand up there too, and tell her what you want to ask, we will try to get you on the show. By the way, I'm going to explain to you what that table is all about in a couple of minutes, but for now, is a college education worth it? If you're a young person contemplating going to college, we'd love to hear from you. If you are a parent who is nervous about the cost but thinks there's value, we'd love to hear from you. And if you're either a current student or a graduate and you have a strong opinion about whether it was worth it, we'd like to hear from you too. The number's 877-301-8970.
We have a study from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York which talks about what college educations are really worth, and they look at kids, or not kids, but young people who got out of college and who didn't at age 25, and they found that young people who had gone to college earned 27% more than high school graduates only, and if you make it to age 55, and let's hope most of you do, then the difference is 60%. So according to the Federal Reserve, the difference in finances is significant.
$1 million over a lifetime.
But at the same time, we're going to talk to the governor about this when she comes in. You know, she announced earlier this month, it was earlier this year, that she's going to get rid of the degree requirements for a lot of state jobs so that you don't have to be a college degree earner to qualify for a lot of these jobs. It's going to impact as much as 90% of the upcoming job openings in the state of Massachusetts. So if you're going to
the
work,
issue is, do you have the skill? The issue is not, do you have a degree?
skill-based job, absolutely. So, and when we talk about college, I mean, when you and I went to college a million years ago, you could work a summer job and get halfway there. That is all over now. It's astronomically expensive to go to college. Some of these schools are $90,000 a year.
Yeah, but can I tell you that one of the things, we've already fallen into the trap that I don't want people, I hope people are not going to fall into. Obviously, finances are a huge thing.
Huge.
Not only finances of what it costs to go, but I mean, the chancellor was saying $16,000, $17,000 a year, as opposed to $100,000 down the street, not terribly far from here. And there's no question you'll make more over your lifetime in the long haul. But you and I have said this before. The most important, I didn't learn as much as I should have in my 4 years at college.
I'm sure you didn't.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But in terms of socialization,
yeah,
it was by far the most important part of my life. I'd never been independent, never been away from my mother, essentially. No, I hadn't. I lived home until I got out of high school. Then I moved to college, and it totally changed my life. And I don't think that I would have had the same trajectory post, 21 years old, had I not had those couple of years on my own, meeting people and the kinds of people I didn't grow up with. So there are other issues, even though I know what sort of lingers over everything is the insane cost, at least of much of higher education.
Well, just as one of the texters just said, the question should be, is the crushing debt worth it? Because education is always valuable, and that's a great way to put it, too. Our number is 877-301-8970. What do you think? Is college worth it in 2024? Deborah from Jamaica Plain, you're first this hour on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for calling.
Hi, Deborah.
Hey, good morning. Wow.
Wow, this is right. Hi.
I'm very concerned about education, and I think that we need to obviously bolster our education at the elementary.
Hey, Deborah, I hate to do this to you. One call in, your phone is not working so terribly well. We're going to put you on hold. We're going to get back to you after the next call and hope that it's doing a little bit better than it was. My apologies. Diane in Fairhaven, you're first on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Diane.
Hi, missed you guys. We're going to get there soon, my son and I.
Oh, great. Great. Come say hi. Yeah.
Okay. My older son has autism, and it took him 7 years to get his degree from a BCC, a community college, because he had to depend on Mass Health to pay for the courses. Anywho, my younger son went to New Bedford Voc and learned a trade. And now he lives in California, very expensive, but because he's in the union out there, he's doing very well. The trades are what is going to make a difference for a lot of kids. They shouldn't have to go to college if they're not going to be productive afterwards. Nathaniel's friends who live in town and have bachelor's degrees are living home with their parents because they can't afford their own place. So that is my opinion.
Yeah.
Hey, Diane, thanks as
Diane,
always.
I'm so glad you call. I mean, we hear this all the time. You can't get enough electricians, you can't get enough plumbers, and when you do get them, you're stunned by how much it costs. You have to pay them. I mean, folk schools, but there's a big controversy now. There are not enough folk schools. It's hard to get into folk schools. Madison Park is the big folk school in Boston. There's been some issues over there, needless to say. New Bedford Folk's a great school. Diamond Regional Vocational High School in my hometown. Fall River's a great school, but there are not enough of them.
You know what I'm thinking about what Diane said. If a caller were to say, yeah, college is definitely worth it, but then you did a follow-up question and say, is it worth it if after you graduate you have to go live with your parents? I would assume that a decent percentage of people might change their opinion.
You know, there's this return on college majors thing, and no surprise that the kind of majors that make you the most money, generally speaking, STEM, healthcare, business, liberal arts and humanities are quite far down. Education, social work, and the arts are way far down. So you get out of school, you want to become a social worker, and you have to get a master's degree to become a social worker, and then you're going to get out, and you're going to make, I don't know what starting social workers make for the state, maybe 60 grand, maybe 70 grand. It's not a lot of money, and you're going to pay off not only your undergraduate education, but your graduate education. So I think that's part of the problem. If you're requiring extended education for people that aren't going to make big salaries, it's almost impossible to do it now, which is why I think if you're young, the economy is so bad between your student loan debt and trying to pay the rent. The economy is not working so well for you.
Let's try Deborah a second time. She's still in JP. Hi, Deborah. Hope it's working.
I hope it's working better now.
It is.
My interest was that all those things that the Chancellor mentioned that really require solid education for addressing climate change, et cetera. But I'm also concerned about having really educated people to protect our democracy. I think that the Project 2025 people are counting on people being uneducated and being manipulated because they don't know any better and don't have a solid understanding of democracy and how government works.
Can I tell you, I am so glad you stayed on the line, and I'm embarrassed that we didn't say the same thing that you did. Thanks for the call, Deborah. So much of the chaos and polarization, I know you agree with this, is because people don't know what the hell they're talking about. And some people choose not to know what they're talking about, but the education system is the thing to fill the holes that are existing in much of our uncivil society. Well, so I couldn't agree more, Deborah.
Since we're in Boston, Massachusetts, I'm going to read the text from the person trashing the southern states who says, I agree with the Chancellor, education is crucial to democracy. I am from a southern state, and the less educated there are most likely to follow fake news and to fail to understand science. That is a texter, that's not me. And then somebody else said, oh, this is Jean from Maura. This is the old argument many of us used to give about why it was important to go to college. Jean says she got her bachelor's degree, never made much money, but her college education is the most valuable thing she's ever acquired. It should be at least as much about expanding your mind, Jim, as filling your pockets.
I totally agree with that. By the way, you mentioned fake news a minute ago. Do you know who used the term fake news last night?
Who?
The puppy killer. The puppy killer, the governor of South
Nome.
Dakota, even though the story about her killing her dog is in her own book, written by her.
Yeah, her memoir.
For some reason, it is fake news.
Oh, is she denying she's a puppy killer now?
She's saying it's fake news. I don't know what she's denying, but it's fake news.
Did she admit killing the goat? She killed the goat as well.
I don't know what it is. Kate in Providence.
A goat and a puppy.
And a puppy. Kate, fake news.
She shot him to death.
Kate
mowed him right down there on the farm.
Kate in Providence, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're at UMass Boston. Hey there.
Okay, great. Thank you. There are two points I wanted to make, and one is that when you talk about earning potential over a lifetime, I think that I've heard it also talked about as sort of the wealth over a lifetime, and so they talk about the debt parallel to what you can earn over a lifetime, but really if you link those two up, the wealth over a lifetime is not what it's represented to be, the 26% whatever or this and that, because you have to, correlate it with the debt you're in. That's one thing. The second thing is I went back to school to get a master's with the intention of teaching at the college level because she needed that to do that. And so I did, and I've been teaching many years at the college level and still have not been able to pay off my debt for the master's. So it's kind of this weird little cycle. And all the benefits of I totally agree with, but if the pragmatic decisions have to be made about the finances, then the rest
totally
is
right.
moot, you know.
You know,
So,
Kate, you're not alone.
yeah.
You know, the Obamas were still paying off their college debt up through a couple of years before Barack Obama was elected president of the United States. So you're not alone. Kate, thanks for the call. One other statistic, you cited a couple in terms of money.
Right.
In 2017, 51% of the jobs in America required a college education. In 2021, only 44%. 4 years, a drop in 7% in terms of a college degree being required.
Well, frankly, it really doesn't a skill-based requirement make more sense?
Doesn't
I mean,
me.
I think, and then it doesn't prohibit a whole bunch of people from getting that job. By the way, we have a programming announcement, Jim. People are texting. We are not streaming live today on youtube.com/GBH News. However, the show will be posted on YouTube shortly after 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
And by the way, it's still time to come on down here at UMass Boston. You don't have to go to or teach at UMass Boston. If you want to see the governor, ask a question of the governor. She'll be here at 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock. And Marjorie, we need to take a break.
Now listen to this
good.
before we take a break. This is a texter. I just graduated 5 years ago with political science and wanted to be a paralegal and then go to law school. But almost all jobs, this texter says, don't want to pay more for a bachelor's degree. They're okay with a 2-year associate degree. And this person is pointing out if they knew this then maybe they wouldn't have spent 4 years in school to work as a paralegal and then maybe put that money toward going to law school later on. So that's a point, too, I hadn't thought of.
Taking a break.
We're taking a break.
That's
right.
correct,
We are
Marjorie.
taking a break. We are broadcasting live from UMass Boston down in Dorchester, University Hall here. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are not streaming at youtube.com/GBH News right now, but the show will be posted on YouTube shortly after 2 o'clock.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Next year, Boston will host its first public art triennial, turning city streets into an outdoor museum and featuring 15 commissions from local, national, and international artists. Plus, we'll look at the Tony nominations, and in the battle of Kendrick Lamar versus Drake, Lamar escalates the feud, dropping his diss track, Euphoria. That's today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Boston Ballet, presenting Carmen. This daring program features the anticipated return of Jorma Ello's Carmen and one of the most celebrated moments in classical ballet, Kingdom of the Shades. On stage now through May 5th. Tickets at bostonballet.org. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at UMass Boston's University Hall. Thank you all for coming. It's actually a pretty beautiful crowd, I should say. And you turn around and you look at the water. It's a beautiful setting, pretty beautiful people. It's great. We're asking a pretty simple question. Is college education worth it in 2024? And we'd like to know why, whatever your answer is. I mentioned before that if you're here, don't be shy and you want to ask a question or make a comment either now or want to ask a question of the governor later, you go to the Politics IRL table in the back, and you probably are saying, what is the Politics IRL table? It's a video series that features young voters talking about political issues and that matter to them. The project pairs 2 voters under 25, by the way, with different political perspectives. They meet to discuss the issues motivating them to vote and ask each other questions. The team, our colleagues back there, will shoot a video somewhere around Boston once a month leading up to November's election. And they are here today to recruit UMass Boston students for the project, which sounds fabulous to me. So if you're interested, go back and see our coworkers at Politics IRL.
Here's a texter who says, I graduated college 3 years ago. My biggest deciding factor was going financial aid, where I ended up going. That was the big deciding factor. Lived at home, learned through a friend to haggle the financial aid, got a great deal. I considered myself lucky to have been able to pay off my debt in only 2 years. My expectations of the typical college experience never happened, but I was able to learn so much, meet new friends, and get to a place in life that my parents could only dream of. If there's a little debt and you want to learn, college is worth it.
You know, speaking of the cost, by the way, I just saw our colleague, the higher education reporter, Kurt Carapezza. They've got a great podcast. It's called something like, what is it, Scams on Earth? Or what the hell is it called? What is it called?
College Uncovered.
Oops, sorry about that.
Yes.
College Uncovered, that really gives you great tips and fabulous information if you're about to enter the college system about how to work the system so you don't get screwed, for lack of a better
and
word.
how to work the financial system,
Yeah, exactly.
and when to apply for college. I mean, if you've got a kid going to college, or you're going to college yourself, I learned so much that I wish I'd known, because I think I got scammed.
Your kids graduated like 10 years
ago. I know.
ago.
I wish I'd known this before I got scammed left and right and all over the place. Absolutely.
Let's go to Amanda in the hometown of Marjorie Egan. That'd be Fall River. Hi, Amanda.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my call, and thank you for the show today. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
I just had I just had a couple of questions. Is college worth it? I asked which college, which major. There was a great book out a couple of years ago called After the Ivory Tower Falls by Will Bunch. And what I loved about it is he talked about how it used to be seen as a public good when the GI Bill enabled people like my grandfather to go to night school and get a degree in engineering. That opened up a world for so many folks that never considered college. But it's been defunded. Our public education has been defunded so much that I don't know if people see it as a luxury that's only for elites rather than a public good that helps drive our economy and also keeps the health of our democracy vibrant. So those are the only two things I wanted to share. That,
Amanda, I am so glad you made that point, because we used to give so much more money to schools like UMass, to state schools. We just had a texter from somebody who points out that in Europe, the United Kingdom, Canada, Western countries, a lot of the Western world, they pay next to nothing or nothing for their education, and enables all these people to go to school who aren't going to school. And this texter points out that America is not doing itself any favors by making it nearly impossible for most people of regular means to get a college education. I'm so glad you made that point.
One other thing, Amanda, and I'm very glad you told us about what the GI Bill meant to your family, but one corollary to that Marjorie and I learned about far too late when there was an op-ed in the Boston Globe by Cornell Brooks and a professor whose name I forget from Harvard. And then we talked to Michael Curry, the former head of the NAACP in Boston, about how the GI Bill on paper was available to GIs of color, but in the real world it was not available at all, particularly to black GIs. And that history is worth knowing a little bit about in terms of how it plays out, you know, decades later. Amanda, excellent call. Thank you for doing it.
You know, so one of my kids who went to business school, though, found that there was like 20 guys and women in the business class, you know, a couple of hundred kids that were had served in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they were there in a free ride, as well they should be, after serving the country in those dangerous wars. Sasha on Cape Cod, thank you for calling.
Hello, Sasha.
Hi.
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 I was just calling because my daughter went to college this year. Hello?
Yeah, I hear you.
Oh, okay. She went to college this year, and I had promised her how much fun it was going to be, and you're going to meet so many people. And she got there and just was calling home saying, not true. This is not fun, and I'm not meeting anybody because everything's different now. You know, when I went to college, nobody even had a computer. You had to go to the computer lab, and nobody had a phone. So now she was like, everyone's just on their phone and on their computer in their room. They don't go to the library, the computer lab, the campus center. Nobody goes anywhere. They just stay in their room. You don't meet anybody. And they have fire safety doors, so all the doors shut automatically. You can't meet anyone. And she left there after a semester. She knew 4 people in her dorm, and that was it. And she's not going back. And it's a very different experience.
Can I tell you though, Sasha, I think it depends on where, because we've only been here since like 8 o'clock this morning. We have seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students walking through University Hall. So maybe you want to tell your kid to think about UMass Boston as a, I'm serious. I'm not in any way dismissing what you said about our experience, but there's a lot of action where we are. Sasha, thank you for your perspective. We appreciate it. 877-301-8097. By the way, when you went, I mean, you and I went to college before practically there was college. I mean, did you even think for a second that college was not the natural next step for you, or no? It's not even a decision.
There was not a decision, yeah. I was going.
You know what I'm a huge advocate of? And my younger daughter, who actually was in City Year down the block at the McCormick School, that was then Deborah McCormick, that the Chancellor was talking about, she took a gap year after
gap
high
years
school.
Are great.
And we're not going to talk about it today. I used to oppose, I think it's a huge and wonderful opportunity for young people who are undecided about what their future path should be.
Let's go to Chris in Framingham. Thank you for calling.
Hello, Chris.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I just want to point out, I think that you're looking at this the wrong way, maybe.
We are?
It shouldn't be an either or. Why are we not looking at how post-high school education is delivered, how it's paid for, and the value it brings to the community?
I think it's great you're bringing that perspective. I mean, I think a caller hinted at that before in terms of the public good and educated citizenry. And I mean, I don't quarrel with you at all. Maybe we should have emphasized it more, but we're glad you did. Chris, thank you very much for the call. Do you see people up there in the rafters, too? That's pretty great.
Yeah,
Sight line
I know.
kind of
It
thing.
goes all the way up to the top.
Thanks for coming, all of you. How do we look from there, by the way? Decent or not? It's 2 thumbs up, 2 thumbs down. In any case.
This is a gorgeous school.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's go to Emma in Mattapan. Hi, Emma. You're on Boston Public Radio, live from UMass Boston. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure.
So I went to the University of New Hampshire. I graduated in 2019.
Yep.
I studied social work and women's studies, and I will say that a lot of my peers would probably say that they don't think that college is worth it for the amount of debt that you get into.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it comes down to how you go to college, meaning are you doing experiences like doing internships or...
Say that again. I missed that. Are you what? What did you say there?
Doing internships. So I
see.
did 6 internships in college.
That's great.
Wow.
I say more than classes, more than anything else. Internships and those real life experiences is what I think you get the most out of college. This is all with a stipulation. Big fan of going to college. I do think that we kind of got completely screwed over by the courts taking away the student loan forgiveness for folks recently, and I think a lot of people are struggling. So I would say I just had a call with someone who is graduating from Bunker Hill Community College in May. She's going to UMass Lowell, and I think that is a really great way of getting around the cost is by going to community college first and then going to a 4-year institution.
Well, you know, by the way, I don't know the name of the program, but when Governor Healey is here, we'll ask her about it. She implemented this thing where if you're over 25 years old, I think in one of the other criteria is you have some college education. We'll ask her. I don't want to give out the wrong info. You can go to community college free, which is, I think, a fabulous notion. But let her fill in the blanks, Emma.
Remember we
Thanks
were
for the
talking
call.
yesterday about this? And
Yeah.
sometimes 4-year colleges won't take all the credits from a community college.
Because they want to
which I
charge
think
you
is-
more.
Which I think is really, really crummy. Diane from Milford says she thinks the more important question is why are these very expensive colleges and universities being held accountable? Why aren't they for charging ridiculous tuition, room and board, especially when these big universities have huge endowments? And she talks about how kids are so in debt coming out of college now that they can't even afford a car loan because they have such huge other debts. Some schools, I mean, Harvard is loaded, obviously. If you get in there, you go for free, and there are other colleges that are like that.
Some go for free. It's not.
No, not everybody.
Some go
Not
for
everybody
free.
goes for free, but they're need blind, right? If you get in there,
That's correct.
and
If
you
you get
are
in.
well, it's hard to get in there, obviously. But if you get in there and you're need blind, they will look at your financial situation. I mean, that's their pledge. I don't know if they're keeping.
By the way, you know who's
pledge.
responsible for that to a great degree, even though he's reviled in some other ways, is Larry Summers. When he was president, went on to be secretary of, what was he the secretary of?
I have no idea. But you know what? It's sunny out here, and it's so sunny I may have to put my sunglasses on soon, Jim.
You're sort of obsessed with the out of doors.
Well, we're looking out at this. I mean, I can't believe it. You're looking out here. I couldn't concentrate trying to do my homework, looking out at the water all the time. It's spectacular.
By the way, the Healey plan is called Mass Reconnect. Again, we'll bring it up with the governor when she's here, but you should check it out. In the meantime, we have time for Alex from Watertown. Hello, Alex. Hi.
Hi, Marjorie and Jim. Great
Jim is
to
my name.
talk
Yeah,
to you.
that's right. Hi.
Yep.
Hi.
Yeah, I know, Jim.
I know you forgot for a second.
so
I forget too. Go ahead.
I have insurmountable amount of student debt. I had about 400K when I started. It's down in the 200s now, and this was with a doctorate. I started making 38,000. That went to 50, and then have slowly been kind of climbing up. Basically, I wanted to say that I think the conversation around student debt, yes, it is a problem. There's a lot of problems. The debt is crushing, and I also think there's some nuance there. So the Obamas, for example, I think partly how that took so long to pay off is that they were in public service. So I think that they probably took advantage of public service loan forgiveness. So it's not that that's a strategic decision. And there are a lot of loan repayment plans that you can take advantage of. I took advantage of them to get to where I am, that when I was making 38 or 50K, I was only paying maybe, $50 a month or something. So, like, and there is refinancing and everything else. So I think there is some more nuance there on.
Yeah, but Alex, if it's gone from 400 grand to 200 grand, isn't that beyond the financial obligation? Isn't it psychologically debilitating to know what kind of hole you're in?
I mean, for a period of time, yes, it was. But I think that's one of the bigger problems is that, like, the entrance counseling for these loans in colleges, I think some colleges do better than others, but like, people don't fully understand what they're actually taking on. I was aware that when I took this on, I came from moderate means. I basically assumed that I would never own a house, I'd always rent, and I'd be working till I'm dead. But
God. Well, that's a hell of a positive attitude. That's my kind of thing, Alex. Alex, I got to let you go because I want to say in College Uncover, which I was mentioning before, they talk to you about colleges evading their legal obligation to disclose up front the true cost, but they also tell you how to manipulate or work through the system so you find out what the true cost is before you commit to it.
Yeah, we are moving on, but thank you very much for everybody who called and texted. Coming up after...
Can I just say again, by the way, because everybody was too shy to make a comment from here, when the governor's here, if you want to talk to her, go back to Politics IRL, tell them what you want to talk about, and there's a decent chance we'll get you on.
That's right. She's going to be here from 1 to 2.
She is.
Taking our questions and yours. But right now, right after the new news, I should say, UMass Boston's new Institute on Artificial Intelligence launched this year. Its founder and namesake, tech entrepreneur Paul English, joins us to talk about the importance of egalitarian AI systems, along with UMass Boston philosophy professor Near Eisikovits. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from University Hall at UMass Boston. That is where we are broadcasting till 2 o'clock. If you're in the neighborhood, come on down.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Regan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com. High School Quiz Show is celebrating 15 years of sharp minds, devoted fans, and big wins. Join new host Joe Hansen and catch the semifinal of High School Quiz Show tomorrow at 6 on GBH2.
Trusted, local, news. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Bradley, head on Boston Public Radio. We're live from UMass Boston. We're the nation's first university-based institute dedicated to ensuring artificial intelligence tools are used ethically and democratically. We'll talk with its funder and namesake, UMB alum and entrepreneur Paul English, and the school's director of the Center for Applied Ethics, Near Eisikovits.
I'm Marjorie Regan, and former head of the Environmental Protection Agency for the United States of America, Gina McCarthy, a UMass Boston alum herself. She'll join us. Then we'll end the show with Ask the Governor. Maura Healey will take our questions, your calls, and texts. Or you can ask her a question directly if you come down to our studio here at UMass Boston's University Hall. All that ahead, Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from UMass Boston in Dorchester.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Amy Held. Former longtime advisor to former President Donald Trump, Hope Hicks, has taken the witness stand at his New York criminal trial. Prosecutors want to establish what she knew about hush money payments made during the 2016 campaign. More pro-Palestinian protest arrests made today at New York City campuses at NYU and at the New School. The New School says arrested protesters include students and outsiders who were trespassing. It caps a week that saw several universities reach a breaking point with protest camps and call in police who made hundreds of arrests. President Biden broke his silence yesterday about a divisive issue. NPR's Tamara Keith reports.
The central point was that there has to be balance between free speech and rule of law. There's a right to protest, he said, but not to cause chaos. And he also spoke to the concerns of Jewish students and others who've been verbally attacked or otherwise felt unsafe on their campuses. He said anti-Semitism is wrong, but so is Islamophobia.
Today, Education Secretary Miguel Cardona sent a letter to university presidents condemning abhorrent incidents of anti-Semitism on campuses. It comes after Republican lawmakers have criticized the response to reports of anti-Semitism. The Biden campaign is launching a new advertising push aimed in part at convincing Latinos that abortion rights are of
money on whatever they need most, and it can help them keep a job or move to a better one. Jennifer Ludden, NPR News.
Traffic on a major northeast thoroughfare is being disrupted for several days after a tanker truck burst into flames on I-95 in Connecticut yesterday. It compromised a bridge. Here's Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont.
If all goes well, and I'll monitor this, we should have two-way commuting back on I-95 as early as Monday morning.
School is out in some parts of Connecticut due to the disruptions. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Officials at MIT have sent an advisory today to students and staff that says due to public demonstrations taking place near 77 Mass Ave on Friday, May 3rd, today, MIT buildings along Mass Ave will be accessible only via the MIT ID reader system starting at 10 a.m. The email goes on to mention that many buildings are the many buildings that have that restricted access, and the message ends with the fact that Mass Ave could become blocked or even closed between Vassar Street and Memorial Drive if the public demonstrations attract large crowds. And we do have a reporter over there getting ready to report on the scene. State officials have activated a command center to help manage the fallout from the Steward healthcare financial crisis and an anticipated breakup of the company's hospital system in Massachusetts. Globe reports the move comes amid growing concern about a potential bankruptcy by Steward and its impact on 8 community hospitals in Boston and surrounding communities. The hospitals have nearly 16,000 workers and serve hundreds of thousands of patients. The Clinical Incident Command Center, as it's called, will monitor developments at Steward hospitals as the state prepares for major changes within the hospital system. In sports, the Red Sox are on the road this weekend. First stop, Minnesota, for a weekend series with the Twins. It's an 8:10 start tonight. And the Bruins woke up this morning, feeling a lot like that 90s band, Four Non-Blondes.
What's going on?
The Bruins lost to Toronto last night, forcing Game 7 in Boston tomorrow. Boo! This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. Capital One, what's in your wallet? Details at CapitalOne.com. And the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Yeakin. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from UMass Boston in Dorchester, and the sun is coming out. Later in the show, we're going to be joined by Governor Maura Healey. She's going to take our questions and yours. And back on Tuesday, we'll be at the Boston Public Library again. We're going to be joined by Michelle Wu, the mayor of the city of Boston, who also will take our questions and yours. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. One more preliminary thing. Today's show is not streaming live on YouTube, but will be posted on YouTube shortly after we conclude at 2 o'clock. This academic year, UMass Boston became home to the nation's first university-based institute dedicated to democratizing the use of artificial intelligence focusing on the social, ethical, and diversity issues facing our society as we advance technology. We're joined now by the guy behind the Institute, Paul English, who happens to be a UMass Boston alum, and UMass Boston philosophy professor, Nir Eisikovits, director of the university's Center for Applied Ethics. Paul, Nir, great to see you both. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great to meet you, Nir. Great to see you again, Paul. So you donated, Paul, $5 million to launch this AI Institute here at UMass. So what are you doing? Why? What's it about?
We're having a lot of fun. It's still early. We're trying to figure this all out. I think the professors are learning from the students as much as the students are learning from the professors. With a lot of new technology, sometimes it's the kids, the students who are helping us find the path here. So it's been very interesting beginning of the journey. But really what we're trying to do here at UMass is to make AI courses available to every student, no matter what you're studying. Even like, let's say you're in the nursing school. And we want you to use AI for two reasons. One, how to use AI to be a better student, like personalized learning. If you're falling behind somewhere, have the AI help catch you up to class, whatever. And the second thing is how to be better at your career. And we want to think about both of those things. And also the UMass bent on this is doing this with really an ethical consideration in mind, trying to make sure that AI is equally available, it's not biased, it's transparent, and so forth.
So if you're studying all the science and biology and stuff you need to become a nurse, then you'd also be learning about artificial intelligence at the same time.
Absolutely.
Oh.
But not just in sciences. My understanding is this
everything
crosses everything. Is that near you're nodding in agreement? Yes?
Yeah, I mean, I think the basic idea would be to get both a technical skill set of how it's relevant for whatever, either business or science or nursing application you have, and at the same time get a sense of like what the societal problems and challenges involved in using it are.
When we think ethics, I was reading a lot that you've written and spoken about, Nir, and I naively thought the ethical concerns were primarily limited to taking jobs away from people, which is obviously an important issue, but far from the only issue, the bias of some of the algorithms. But you identified a whole host of issues that I'm embarrassed to say I hadn't thought about. Explain to us what some of the ethical issues are that you see we need to confront as AI explodes in this society.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say correctly, the questions of bias, this is a technology that could supercharge bias. Honestly, that's the story with a lot of new technologies. Interesting thing is those kind of problems potentially could be solved technically. So for example, a facial recognition system can be biased, but it potentially can be taught to be not biased more easily than a human being can be taught to be non-biased. In parallel to those kind of issues, some of the other issues are like, what kind of basic capacities does AI change when you use it? So if you have a technology that's increasingly making the kind of decisions that middle management used to make about hiring, about firing, about police force allocation, about who gets a mortgage, that means that people are using their judgment less and less often. And judgment is a bit like a muscle. So there's, that set of issues.
Can you stay on that? That totally jumped off the page.
I never thought of that.
To me, if you don't use it, you lose it, as the saying goes. So what does one do about that? How does one attack that?
Well, if these technologies in the end are going to create more leisure time for us, we need to find high-stakes context in our leisure lives to actually use our judgment. To develop our taste, but AI also sort of takes over the developing of your taste because, God forbid that you try to listen to a song that you're not predicted to like based on all the previous songs that you listen to on Spotify, or, we don't find things by accident anymore or not as much, or there's a risk of like that
That's
whole,
another great point,
serendipity thing disappearing from our life. So they're not unsolvable things, but they're things that are not going to be solved if we don't pay specific attention to them and if we don't put them on our radar. Paul
English, you mentioned before that what you're hoping to do is incorporate AI into all these subjects, math, science, nursing, whatever. Is anybody else doing this? And where'd you get this idea from?
I think every college campus is both excited about AI but also struggling with how to bring it into the classroom. When you looked a year ago, what people were writing about, are students going to use AI to cheat? They're going to use AI to write up their papers and write the homework. And professors today, a year later, still have a difference of opinion about that. Some professors are saying you can bring your laptop into class.
Yeah.
You know, others are saying knowing that some of the work you do in class without the computer is not going to be with AI, where at home you might be using it. My interest in, I just am very loyal to UMass, having gone here. It really changed my life. And I think UMass is a very unique school. It's different from any other school in Boston. And I think UMass always has had a very practical view of academic matters. And I think that's what we need with AI, is a very practical view about how will this change my job? How will this change my life as a student?
You know, you mentioned, I was just going to mention, you mentioned this is where you came to school. How did you end up here? Why did you choose a few years back, just a few years back?
Yeah, it was a few years back. I went to Boston Latin, which is a really good high school. I was not a great student, but I tested well in my SATs, and I got a scholarship to UMass. So I came here for the scholarship, and I also came here for the music program. I wrote for the jazz band here. I wrote for a 15-piece band. And when I got my master's degree in computer science, I was studying computer design music. I built a synthesizer. So I was able to take my music education at UMass with my computer education. And I also worked as a programmer while I was going to school here. I think I worked probably 30 hours a week. And I liked the combination of working and learning in the workplace, but then coming into the classroom and how those two things work together.
Were you living in your parents' basement while you were coming to UMass?
Yes, I was. Exactly, literally next to the water heater. I'm
Those
not kidding.
were the days.
Yeah.
By the way, he's building a synthesizer. I'm learning how to boil water at the same time. I should say, you know, we were speaking to the Chancellor near before. He was talking about climate issues, and he was talking about he's going to the Vatican. He helped organize this thing. So is our next guest, Gina McCarthy. So is our next guest, the governor and the mayor as well. How does climate and this AI program that Paul is funding and you're helping make happen, how does that intersect with climate issues here at UMass Boston?
Yeah, I mean, the technology can be useful for sort of processing, obviously, large data sets and understanding patterns that are not necessarily obvious. So insofar as, you know, it has real potential to, not only in the area of climate, but like, for example, unfolding the structure of proteins and, you know, understanding how proteins work and what the medical applications of that are. So anything that has to do with an amount of data that was previously unyielding to us now has a much better chance of yielding to us. And, you know, like we're saying, with that comes.
You know, I know this is in the formation stage. I think your goal is September or thereabouts. What level of interest can you, I don't know if you can quantify, what kind of interest have you heard from the student body and the faculty?
Students and faculty are fascinated by it and, you know, understandably also somewhat anxious about whether the skill set that they're going to get in college is still going to be relevant by the time they get out of college. So, you know, the question is sort of how to shape something like this so that it gives people a sort of varied skill set that they can come out with. So, for example, in my, you know, one of my ideas about it is that, Paul and I were just talking about this before the show, is, you know, maybe you start some kind of major where people, you know, both learn how to train an AI model for the specific application they're interested in, nursing or advertising or whatever, but also the same people learn, you know, what some of the potential societal issues are that come up with it. So it's like the model that they had of PPE, of the Philosophy, Politics, and Economics program, where to be a sort of well-rounded public servant, you need to have a little bit of all of those.
By the way, that's the voice of Maura Eisikovits. She's a philosophy professor at UMass Boston, director of the University Center for Applied Ethics. He's here with Paul English, who made the donation and after whom this new program is named. You know, by the way, for the people who don't know, obviously, based upon the $5 million contribution, it's fairly obvious that Paul's been fairly successful in his life. He's the founder of Kayak, for those who don't know what it is that got him sort of springboarding into the tech world, and lots of things since then.
Paul, you talked about combining AI with these other subjects, but I think everyone says you should never major in English. It's a waste of time to major in English. I don't know, in college, I don't know if that's really true. But I
completely disagree with that,
okay,
by the way.
Okay.
I've hired some incredible English majors.
Why were they great?
The most important skill in business is communication.
That's true.
Right? And it's not just speaking and writing. The other side of it also is listening. And I think through the study of literature, you can actually learn to be a good listener, too.
Okay. Then
I'm a fan of liberal arts. I have a BA here.
Yes, but yours not in liberal. Your BA
No,
is
it was not. It was
okay.
not.
Okay, but you're a big
But I
fan
think
of
the liberal
arts.
arts course is
That's
really
good.
important.
I think that's great to hear. I love to hear that kind of thing. But how would AI work with liberal arts? How would it work with history or English, or if you're studying Spanish or another language?
One thing it can do is give you materials to read that it can generate a learning program for yourself. So it can, if you want to write a paper about a certain subject, the AI can go out there and read millions of pages and boil down for you what are the 100 pages or 200 pages you really need to read of the million pages on this subject. So it can do personalized learning for you, as one example.
Wow, we should do that for
Marjorie,
reading here, Jim.
I just came from class, and I was talking to my students about Freud, and I told them that I'm going to leave a little early to come speak to both of you and to Paul. And you know, one weird example is you could train an AI model on Freud's writings and on Freud's letters and on other kind of correspondence, and you know, have a fake conversation with him about the material. It has its limitations, but it's extremely engaging. And something that you could.
Yeah, but Nir, can I tell you, speaking of fake, I wasn't going to bring this up because it gets me too freaked out.
Yeah.
But since you used the word fake, we all have heard the phone call allegedly from Joe Biden to the voters of New Hampshire the night before the New Hampshire primary, in which the fake Joe Biden, and you can't tell it's fake, at least the average person can't, said, don't bother voting tomorrow, just wait till the final election, it's not necessary. Then we learned that some magician in New Orleans in 5 minutes concocted this thing. I'm panicked about deep fakes as November is 6 months away. Tell me why I shouldn't be.
You should be.
And what are we going to do about it?
Well, for one thing, you know, people side by side with getting, up to speed on their AI skills, need to spend less time on AI-driven platforms and need to get their news not from sources that are looking to make money, but from sources that are interested in informing them. So if you spend less time, not you, but if one spends less time on Twitter and TikTok and Snapchat, then one is less likely to see the deep fake videos. And if you say, I want to learn about X, Y, and Z that's happening in the world, let me go to the Times, the Wall Street Journal, let me see who good journalists are, follow those on Twitter rather than et cetera, et cetera. So I think part of what we need to do, and we're already doing it, is put a lot of money and time into media and information literacy.
You know, Paul, the other fear I have, and you're a tech guy, and as I say, created zillions of companies, including a dating service that we talked to you about. Which
I know, I love that.
I knew.
Are you still doing that?
Here we
Well,
go.
you have to
Yeah.
have,
Here we
okay,
go.
so tell people
Call
briefly.
Lola. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
but you got to be.
That wasn't my
you
question.
make up the dates. You're
okay.
available Tuesday or Friday. I put my sunglasses on. I'm trying to look cool here.
You
also,
look very cool.
Because
you
the
and
sun,
Joe Biden.
The light bothers my eyes.
Okay,
but,
fine.
But tell people what the dating app is. I think
Yeah, it
it's
launches
great.
on May 20.
Okay.
It's Lola.
Yeah.
It's like love language,
Great name.
L-O-L-A.
Yeah.
I'm creating it with my fiance, Rachel. We met in a dating app ourselves 4 years ago. And we're letting you pick what night you want to go out, let's say Thursday, and we only show you people who also want to go out on Thursday. So we're sort of cut the chase.
I love that.
Less chatting, more dating. That's the idea.
By the way, I had no intention to ask about Lola, even though I knew you did.
Yes.
My question was...
Sorry for that.
The other great fear...
Well, it's a great idea. I love the idea.
God. The other great fear it is a great idea. The other great fear I have, Paul English, and for you too, Nir, beyond the deep fake thing, is, people tend to forget. This all exploded on the scene. What was it, a year and a half ago? Was it October of 20? And look where we are. And I think most people who have your skills say the feeling was this had happened 50 years from now rather than now. Do we have the ability, ethically, regulatorily, I don't think that's a word, but you know what I mean, to stay caught up with the incredibly rapid advance of the technology? Or is it, tell the truth, is it a losing proposition?
I don't want to say it's a losing proposition. There's a lot of smart people thinking about regulation. Regulation's tricky because if we do a little bit too much regulation in the U.S., maybe there's no regulation in China or in other countries, maybe their AI will get more advanced than ours. So we have to be careful on the regulation front. But at the same time, I think it's really important to have education around ethics and fairness and transparency, and just have that be part of the discourse. Like one of the problems I have with, we talk a lot about AI having a problem of hallucination. So generative AI, like ChatGPT, is just one type of AI. It's AI that really has caught the imagination of the public over the last year and a half. It often, when you ask it to you know, what would it be like if Freud was on this show and talking to Jim about married relationships, your problems?
Yes.
Yeah, what might that look like? The AI is going to make stuff up because it doesn't have a recording you talking to Freud, and that problem of hallucination is one that can be controlled, but we have to keep an eye on it. One of my problems with AI is you ask ChatGPT a question, it gives you an answer that looks very reasonable and it's very confident in the way it talks to you. And then you say, why are you saying that? Like, where do you get that information from? And it doesn't tell you how it's constructing its information, which is a little scary to me. So one of the things I want with AI is just a lot more transparency.
You know, Near, can I ask you one last thing, at least from me, and then Marjorie's got something too. The other word in the description when the release was put out, and we talked to Paul about this and the Chancellor a couple of months ago, was diversity. So much of the tech world, and maybe you should be answering this too, but we'll start with Near, has been wildly non-diverse. What's the world of AI looking at in the first 18 months?
I mean, not only has it been non-diverse, but as you were mentioning earlier, that does have implications for bias, because then the data sets that the AIs are trained on are not diverse, and then the kind of models that data runs on are not diverse. So for these models to do good and fair work, the workforce has to become more diverse. I just want to say one word about your question to Paul from earlier. I mean, in general, we're a lot better at inventing amazing things than thinking about the implications of the amazing things that we invent. And on the other hand, you know, you have Silicon Valley running on, you know, mantras like run fast and break things. And, you know, people might need to be pushed to, you know, run a little slower and break fewer things while we figure this out. Because, you know, Monday afternoon, I'm gonna go talk to the kids in the Mayor's Youth Council about, can you be friends with an AI? Can you have a relationship with AI? Should AI be your therapist? I mean, that's like pretty mind-blowing stuff. I think we ran a little too fast. And so I see part of my job as encouraging people to press the brakes a little bit until we figure some of this out.
So Paul, if you're looking ahead 5 years, what do you want to see here at UMass involving AI?
I want UMass students to be above other universities in terms of how every single student here can use AI in personalized learning more faster, and to think about how they use it in their career. You think about, again, I'm really interested in the School of Nursing here. Think about what's going to happen a year from now when the average nurse from UMass Boston has better diagnostic skills with their AI than a professor at Harvard Medical School. That's happening. That's going to happen. And how's that going to turn the healthcare system inside out a little bit?
Oh, I like that idea. I think that's going to make the professor at Harvard very annoyed.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
You know, by the way, before you go, when I mentioned you founded Kayak, I also want to mention much more currently and much more important in the city of Boston. Paul was also the donor of the first $1 million to Embrace Boston, that not only led to that incredible tribute to Coretta and Martin Luther King Jr. On the Common, but also Embrace Boston, which is now expanding into something really important for our community. Thanks for all that. Good luck, gentlemen, with this project, and it's great to see you both.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with Paul English, a funder of UMass Boston's brand new Paul English Applied Artificial Intelligence Institute. But don't forget his new dating website, Lola, which will be debuting at the end of the month. And UMass Boston philosophy professor Near Eisikovits, director of the University's Center for Applied Ethics. Thank you very much for coming in. Up next, we're going to speak to a couple of students here. We've talked to the faculty, we're going to talk to students at UMass Boston here. Isabella Pino and Ashanti Mclean, they are next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. No, we're not Boston Public Library. We are at UMass Boston in Dorchester. Whoops. We'll be right back.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, pro-Israel counter-protesters are planning a demonstration over the Gaza encampment at MIT. We'll have the latest on the status hearing for suspended Cannabis Control Commission Chair Shannon O'Brien, and this week's Joy Beat, celebrating the person behind the Fatherly Justice Association, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting fathers in times of need and keeping families together. That's today at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Direct Tire and Auto Service, committed to transparency in the auto repair business. Their team will text videos on the vehicle inspection process to help you understand the work they are considering. DirectTire.com.
And Native Plant Trust with Garden in the Woods in Framingham, a botanic garden showcasing the beauty of New England's native plants in a dramatic natural landscape. More information at nativeplanttrust.org.
Oh, I forgot to hear you through this.
Welcome back to Boston. Hi, you guys. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're broadcasting live from UMass Boston's University Hall. Later in the show, well, actually, Gina McCarthy, former head of the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and a UMass Boston grad, will join us in about 10 minutes. In the 1 o'clock hour, the governor, Maura Healey, will be here for an hour. And Tuesday, if you want to come to the Boston Public Library, the mayor will be joining us for an hour. Right now, though, we want to learn a little bit more what it's like to be a student at UMass Boston from two students themselves, Isabella Pino and Ashanti Mclean. It's great to have you both. Thanks so much for being here. It's really great to have you.
Thank you very much both for coming. Before we get into why you came to UMass, I suggested before when I was talking to the Chancellor that what you need out here is a pier and, you know, maybe like a little covered beer garden and some chairs and a beach. I mean, wouldn't that be awesome? Is anybody
The more the merrier.
Yeah. Is anybody talking about that? I mean, look at all this water that you could be out there in the warm weather. Is anybody discussing that? No.
Honestly, I think like over the summer, what I like to do is just walk by the harbor. I actually brought my dog once.
Oh,
and
nice.
so it's like, it's really nice to just walk along there.
Okay.
Marjorie wants to talk about dating sites and Adirondack chairs.
You just
That's
look at this and you
essentially.
think how much fun this could be when the weather's nice and the sun is out. So Isabella, you tell us why UMass? Why did you choose to come here?
So I joined UMass when it was in the middle of the pandemic. So for me, the kind of like the search process was all through online. So I think that was really something that I had to like pull initiative out of myself, where I was like, okay, where do I want to go? Like what website really sticks out to me? And I think that what really also stood out to me was when I was thinking ahead. It's like, where do I want to be when I actually get to step foot onto this campus? And I thought of somewhere where I could commute, because I knew that's something that was very important to me, because financially that's something that also would help me a lot in the future. So I knew I'd be taking an hour-and-a-half train ride here and all that fun stuff. And then I also just thought about it because I live in Riviere. And so the beach is actually right by there as well. So it was kind of like almost like home in a sense. And so that's something that really appealed to me.
By the way, speaking of living nearby, doesn't your mother have a bake place?
Yes.
Named after you, Bella Cakes?
Yes, it
is.
That's an effort, right? Okay, great.
And Ashanti, you're from Connecticut.
I am.
So why come to an out-of-state school?
Yeah, I know. I just always thought that the experience was something that I'd want to be a part of. I'm like, you grow up in the same area, see the same people all the time. I'm like, what if I branch out and see what else is out there?
Yeah.
And specifically with UMass Boston, I just love the location right on the water. And just with the other Boston schools, I knew that it was right in the middle of the city. And I'm like, I kind of like venturing back out into my introverted little corner, not in the middle of all the chaos. So I'm like, okay, UMass Boston gives me the opportunity to go into the city when I want a fun night out, but then after my social battery is drained, I can go right back.
What are you focused on here, Ashanti? What kind of work, what are you focusing on in your work studies?
Yeah, environmental studies student, yeah.
And what do you want to do? Do you know? You're a sophomore, right?
Yes.
Yeah, what do you want to do?
My plan is somewhere within the energy sector, so I'm really interested in clean energy, that kind of like just transition for different communities and having access to it in order to make that change.
Isabella, what are you focused on? What's your study?
Yeah, I study communication and management with concentrations in marketing and international management. For me, it is like focused around small businesses and who knows, maybe a large corporation depending on where I do go. I think what really inspired me a lot was my mother's business. That's something that I've grown up with my entire life, and kind of just branching out and meeting like different customers. I realized that there's a lot that you can do internationally as well with so many different people that like walk in and out every day. So that's kind of like where I'm getting appeal to, it's very exciting.
So we hear you're a tour guide on the side.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes, I
am.
am.
In a lot of places, but let's focus on UMass. When you're giving a tour, what are the places that knock people's socks off?
This building.
Is that,
yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
This specific building. I used to tell people all the time on my tour, it would be like, if you want somewhere to study, study here. Like I would study on like the 3rd and 4th floors overlooking the water because I'd be commuting, so I'd be here pretty late. So I'd be like watching the sunset, finding a place to relax. Another spot would have been the ISC building, the Integrated Science Complex, where it's also overlooking the water a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I guess Campus Center. That's where everything is. Like sometimes you can get a lot of free things there also. Like they also do a lot of things. So I'm like, oh, I'm always something there for free. So I usually go there.
Ashanti, I hope you know that Gina McCarthy is going to be joining us in a couple of minutes. She used to run the EPA, and if I were an environmental studies major, I might scurry over there and say hello to her. She could. But I'm also wondering, because we talk a lot about climate change. I worry a lot about climate change, and I know young people, because they're going to be living through the worst of this at the rate we're going, are very concerned about it. But do you get a sense among your peers in your environmental classes that this is a real burning issue for people, no pun intended?
I definitely say so, especially in the most previous of years, more recent years, I should say. More people are being aware of the fact that this is an issue. As more of these occurrences are happening right in their backyards, they're like, okay, this isn't something that's happening across the ocean. This is happening right outside my window.
Yeah.
So.
I saw a story this morning about the hurricane season being more dramatic this summer, and I was so happy because this is a complaint I have all the time. In too many stories about these horrific storms, whether they're tornadoes or whatever they are, people don't mention climate change, but they mentioned climate change 3 times in this piece this morning. So there's a real awareness that this is a real thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We're talking to 2 UMass Boston students, Ashanti Mclean, who's a sophomore here from Connecticut, and Isabella Pino from Everett and Revere. Revere now, Everett before, something like that?
Yeah, so my mom's bakery is in Everett, but I lived in Revere, yeah.
What's the best thing in the bakery?
The best thing are her chicken empanadas. So that's something that everybody loves because they're almost like the healthier. I get excited. You know, promos for my mom, always.
Okay. So starting with you, Isabel, and then you, Ashanti, and we're really glad to meet you both. You said why you chose this place. You're 4 years in, you're 2 years in. Was it the right choice?
Yes, it was.
Why?
For me, specifically, I have grown a lot as a person. I think once I was actually able to set foot onto this campus, I took on as many opportunities as I could because my time was a little bit cut shorter, I would say. And every time that I would meet someone from a different organization, they were always very welcoming. They want more people involved. And that's something that I started realizing that's something that I really enjoyed doing. And every time that I'd meet new students as well, because I was also working with the orientation programs for a while, I got to meet so many different people with so many different stories, and that's what kind of geared me towards it a little more, and I got very excited every single time, every year, with all the wonderful opportunities all the jobs gave me.
Was it the right choice for you, Ashanti?
I definitely say so as well. When I recognized the fact that this school was one of the most diverse in New England, I'm like, given the fact that I'm an environmental studies student and it's very much of a climate equity issue, just not getting the different perspectives of different cultures, I thought this would be the perfect place to really engage in other kinds of people and see all the different sides that are involved to really see how that can be tackled equitably. So I'm like, this is the place that could definitely do that.
You know, one last thing for me, Ashanti, you know, UMass used to be pretty much a commuter school. People would drive here and go home. You can't drive home on the weekends because you're from Connecticut. How's the nightlife on the weekends?
In the city, I mean, they go to bed pretty early here.
That's a big complaint. We really do.
Tell the mayor you said so on
Yeah, we're a bunch of old hens around here.
I mean, I think it works out perfectly for me, though, because I'm also probably in bed by like 10:30 anyways.
Okay.
So I'm like, I have my time out from, 6 to 8, and then after that, all the buildings are closed, everything's shut off. I'm like, okay, time to go. Perfect.
Okay, all right.
Well, you 2 are great ambassadors
Yeah.
for this place. It's great to meet you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good luck in everything you do. We've been
Thank you.
speaking with UMass Boston students Isabella Pino and Ashanti Mclean. Thanks again to both of you and good luck. Up next, the one I just spoke to before, Gina McCarthy ran the Environmental Protection Agency under President Barack Obama. She's the first White House National Climate Advisor, and she's also a UMass Boston alum. Plus, she's part of that crowd that's going over to see the Pope on climate change issues in a little while. Gina McCarthy is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from University Hall at UMass Boston.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, a new coalition is on a bold mission, eliminating hunger in Massachusetts. Over 1 million people in the state struggle to put food on the table, but this group wants to make Massachusetts the first state to end hunger permanently. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Q Legal, providing legal marketing solutions for law firms in Boston and beyond. Marketing strategies include websites, social media, video, and search. You can learn more about their services at qlegal.com. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from medical bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at University Hall at UMass Boston. Thank you all for coming. This is actually a thrill for us. And if people are wondering why we are not streaming, I don't know why we're not streaming, but I do know that the video of this show will be posted at YouTube shortly after 2 o'clock. Another UMass Boston grad, Gina McCarthy, served as administrator. That's the boss, essentially, of the Environmental Protection Agency under President Obama, and is the nation's first White House National Climate Advisor. She is now the managing co-chair of the Climate Action Coalition. America is all in. I hope they are. Gina McCarthy, it is great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Jim, it's great to be here, Margie.
Yes, thank you so much. Great to see you again, Gina. So,
oh, and a Dorchester kid.
Dorchester,
I forgot the most
that's right,
important
Dorchester.
part.
It's Dorchester.
Dorchester, sorry.
Dorchester. So explain, elaborate. What is America All In?
Oh, America All In is a Mike Bloomberg initiative to try to make sure that all of the resources that were put on the table by President Joe Biden in the Inflation Reduction Act can actually be accessed and expended. Look, the Inflation Reduction Act has $372 billion that is now being invested in the private sector to build projects that are clean energy projects all across the United States, right? And there's 500 and some odd projects already. And we need to make sure that this money that's now out there is captured by communities. So it's all about going to different communities with technical people to let people understand how to access it. And that may sound boring, but it is the most exciting opportunity that I've ever seen.
By the
and
way,
Mike Bloomberg is like all in on this.
It's amazing. There's enough money to help pay for this. It's shocking.
It's shocking.
It's shocking.
This is no longer government as we know it, Jim.
You know, Gina McCarthy, as I said, not jokingly, when the name of the group, America is All In, the problem is not all of America is all in. And you mentioned the $372 billion, the largest commitment ever in the history of this country to the environment. There's an election in 6 months, and one of the two candidates is a proud election denier. If all of that money is not committed in the next, by let's say January, at inauguration, what happens? Assuming that Donald Trump, I mean, for argument's sake, if Donald Trump is the next president of the United States.
Well, I prefer not to do for argument's sake.
Okay.
I prefer to live in the real world, and maybe that's not where the next president is going to be, but I think it is. Look, the reason why I'm pretty bullish on President Biden remaining in office for the next 4 years is he's done more for climate change than any president in history. And what you see here is this is real money going to both red and blue states. In fact, the majority of the money now, the investment of the private sector and public, is going to red states. So you are looking at actually driving significant health benefits. You're talking about clean energy jobs in more than 250 million workers now that didn't exist and have jobs before. You're talking about people saving money on their energy bills. All of that stuff is already happening. Most of the money is getting out now. You'll see in Massachusetts, it's available. They're going to grab it. And so I think the trick is to remember that this is real people, real money, real stuff going on that's going to be very hard for anybody, even a Trump administration, to say, never mind, I'm going to take all that good money back. You're going to fend for yourself. I just don't see it happening.
So I have one more bad news question, then Marjorie can get to all the good news. And you are bearing some good tidings about things that are happening. Beyond who the president is, the Supreme Court does not seem to me to be wildly environmentally friendly. We know what they did on waterways and cutting back the power of your former agency. We know what they did on power plants.
Yeah.
And instead of a big picture approach to the emissions from power plants, it had to be one at a time, which obviously makes the process a lot harder. What level of concern do you have, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump, about the Supreme Court going forward and the work you've dedicated your life to?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I've actually worked for any Supreme Court that I thought was totally going to be supporting our environmental work. I mean, it never happened at EPA. It's always been challenging. And you got to follow the law. You've got to make sure that you're doing things in a way that is going to stand the test of time. But if you think about it, when I was EPA Administrator, it was the first time we moved forward to regulate carbon emissions, right? And as soon as we did it, you know, basically the Chairman Alito just stopped it in its tracks, right? But what we found that happened was that we had done such a good job working with the utility industry and showing them that there was a path forward that was different than before but would be beneficial to them. It was actually where the world was heading. When we did that, the change still happened. And then when President Biden came in, it's been on steroids ever since. So we are now working very hard to make sure at EPA, you can see all of the new regulations that have gone through that are really going to drive coal out of the system because it doesn't need to be here anymore. That is so yesterday. We have to think about today and tomorrow. We're actually going to make sure that any natural gas that's new comes on and uses the best technology, which means that a lot are going to shift just to clean energy instead of natural gas. And we're now regulating forever chemicals. I mean, EPA continues to move forward, and every step of the way they're doing it with an understanding of what the Supreme Court has said before and how to create a path that's going to be more certain from this point.
You know, you said forward. You know that.
Forward.
That's okay. We're talking to Gina McCarthy. She ran the Environmental Protection Agency for President Barack Obama. You know, I'm so glad you mentioned coal because I didn't realize coal is the biggest problem we have in terms of climate. It's the biggest polluter. Yeah. And where I grew up in Fall River, the Brayton Point Power Plant was the biggest coal plant in New England, and we had another one at the other end of the city. So people grew up with terrible asthma and breathing problems and still have them all these years later. But it's gone now, and so is every other coal plant in New England?
That's right, yeah. It's been
That's an
remarkable.
applause line, by the way. Every coal plant closed. Come on.
You could see the black smoke spewing out of this thing, and we had no idea that it was going to cause anybody any harm.
I really have to credit Mike Bloomberg on this, who, by the way, is getting the Medal of Freedom today.
So is John Kerry,
really
by the
cool,
way.
And John Kerry. Awesome. But I really have to credit them because they started a program called Beyond Coal. That's now Beyond Carbon. And what it did was focus on getting rid of the old coal plants. And 70% of the coal plants are no longer operating in the United States because of that effort and EPA's alignment with in regulation. So it's quite remarkable. In New England, we have 0 left. And in fact, the Brayton Point is now
a wind generator.
Exactly.
I know.
It's doing offshore wind
staging.
staging.
It's really great. I wondered, Joe Manchin is not running for president, thank goodness. But he was the longtime senator from West Virginia. He made a lot of money on the coal business.
He really likes me. I just
I'm sure he does. Yeah. But how much
BFFs,
does
Jim, BFFs.
That matters that he's gone in terms of climate, I would say. I mean, he was really a thorn in the side.
Well, in the end, he actually came through when we moved forward with the Inflation Reduction Act, which is no small give on his part.
But didn't he make a deal that he had to be able to expand his coal plants?
No, there was no deal making. We did add some things in to the Inflation Reduction Act that were opportunities that we may not have thought were the best, but we got it done. And the result is that we're really moving forward in a tremendous way. People think that clean energy is just starting. It is now so further along than we ever anticipated at this time. So I'm pretty bullish and pretty optimistic.
You know, can we stay on Brayton Point for a second?
Yeah.
Example, which I didn't know till the conversion, till Marjorie told me about it this morning. This is, I guess, my naive
Huge.
question of the day, is why do the coal people fight so hard if there's evidence that there's an ability to transition in their existing plants from coal to clean energy? Is that a stupid question?
No.
You can be
no,
honest.
Because,
is it a stupid question?
No.
Okay,
no,
thank
it's
you.
not stupid.
Thanks.
It's because coal is very labor intensive. You've got a lot of people in rural communities that are reliant on coal and that is their career. That's what they do for a living. And so you're absolutely right. Over time, people are going to be seeing that there's tremendous benefit in that transition. And we're already seeing rural communities and co-ops looking to divest because it's more expensive. These rural communities pay a higher rate for their electricity than we do, which is absolutely insane given the challenges that they face just putting food on the table. So that will shift, but it needs to be done in a way that's respectful of those human beings, in a way that retransitions them, provides opportunities for different types of employment. That's what we have to do.
You know, Gina McCarthy, you wrote a great piece for The Guardian about methane gas, talking about how you can see or detect methane coming out of landfills from outer space, which is pretty depressing. But and methane, of course, is a lot of the methane is produced by food in landfills. So it seems to me it's a pretty easy transition for people to make to compost, have compost. Boston has composting in the cities. It's kind of fun. Instead of throwing your pineapple or your leftover, whatever it is, in the garbage, you put it in your little compost bin and they take it away. You don't feel so guilty about the food you're wasting and it's not going into the landfill. So those are legit services, number one, I think. And number two, why isn't everybody doing this? It's not in any way universal.
I think that's the tricky part that we have to deal with, Marjorie, is that change needs to happen. And everybody in the world, every human being says we need to change this and change that. But in the end, we don't really want to change anything.
Yeah.
We have a behavior pattern here that we all tend to continue to follow. But methane is 80 times more has more global warming potential than any other greenhouse gas emission. And we have to recognize that, and we have to reduce it. So it is about education. It is about making things easier to make that shift. And that's what we have to keep pushing. And really, it's all about getting people to activate at the community level. You know, I'm a firm believer. I worked at the federal government, but I started at the local level in Massachusetts.
Right.
And I've been at every level of government. What I have learned is that change happens from the bottom up. We have to engage people. We have to talk to them about the benefits it provides to them, but the benefits it provides to their community, and the benefits it provides to their kids and grandchildren. When we stop talking about carbon and start talking about health, start talking about jobs, start talking about our own community and activating. Advocacy is everything from the bottom up. That's how change happens at the federal level. Make no mistake, nothing new comes at the federal level that has been tried and tested at every other level of government.
You know, speaking about the health, you said climate crisis, not just now, I read some of these. Climate crisis is a health crisis, which is what you were touching on. And one of the things, you were one of the first people we talked to years ago, I don't know what job you were doing at the time, when you said, and I'm paraphrasing, so if I get it a little bit wrong, we're talking too much about the polar bear on the iceberg that doesn't relate so much to me. We have to bring it down to, let me call it the barbershop level or something, so that people know what the impact is on them. Health, obviously, is one of those levels. Fill in the blanks there.
You know, what I finally realized is that, and this is just a way to communicate, is that you just have to talk about things that human beings can relate to, things they can do, not just big ideas and big things that everybody else has to do. And health and climate are absolutely interrelated. I now do a bunch of work with an international group called Our Clean Air that is actually looking at reducing air pollution, but we're recognizing that it's directly connected to climate, because both climate and health are both impacted by fossil fuels. Let's be very clear. We cannot just clean energy ourselves to the future. We have to shift away from fossil fuels. That's what's contributing to our air pollution, our health, and that's what needs to change.
So Gina McCarthy, if you happen to watch the Sunday morning talk shows or certain other stations, I don't know who runs all these things, you see a lot of ads from Exxon talking about how they're down with the program, they're doing everything they can to...
Totally. Believe every word
yeah,
they say.
so those are all basically fake news, as the former president likes to call them. That's baloney, I assume.
Well, you know, yes.
Okay.
It's a thin frosting on a very nasty cake.
Okay. So
you know,
go ahead, Jim.
I think we have practically the whole delegation going to the Vatican on the show today.
Yeah.
Governor Healey's gone. Mayor Wu's with us on Tuesday. The Chancellor was one of the organizers of this thing. What do you and you're gone, obviously.
I am.
What do you hope to achieve out of that?
Well, I think it's a tremendous opportunity. In particular, it's focused on, you know, local communities, individual states, individual countries, sort of getting together and recognizing that climate change is a global issue. It is a personal issue. It is about ourselves and our future. And so I'm looking forward to hearing from folks. I'm going to do a session on governance for everybody, where we have mayors coming in and talking about what they're doing. It's an opportunity to exchange the best ideas, to reconnect and re-engage with one another, and really leave there recognizing that we have a worldwide challenge, and we have to get together and make sure that we continue to push forward as hard as we can. That's what it's all about.
You know, I'm sorry, Mark.
So you're going to get to meet the Pope when you're there?
I certainly hope so.
I
did actually meet the Pope when he was at the White House when I was working for President Obama.
Oh, you did?
And I was terrified.
Really?
So I hope I will not... I will figure out how to bend appropriately and say hello without shaking in my kimbies, because I was so nervous.
Yeah, well, Gina McCarthy, a Dorchester girl, I would suspect
Well, I was
you at
afraid he was
least...
going to, start talking to me about all my sins.
That's
and
right.
That would have been really tough.
No, but it was a short meeting, so you didn't have to worry about that. You couldn't get to them all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Gina McCarthy, another naive thing.
Yeah.
You know, we used to work, I won't say his name, with a totally right-wing lunatic talk show host at our old station who was a total believer in climate. The one outlying thing was climate change, conservation, et cetera, and his, conservation conservative, that sort of thing. First of all, who founded the EPA? Some left-wing radical president? Richard Nixon.
Yes.
Okay, so why, this is the naive part, because I assume it's all about contributions and that sort of thing. Why aren't the average Republicans in Congress, who have kids, who have grandkids, or have nieces or nephews or whatever, when they see what's going on that is no longer deniable by anybody, why are they not part of this thing like, in some ways, Richard Nixon was, who was no left-winger, obviously?
No, he wasn't. I guess the dynamic is a very political one in Washington right now. Some people just find that it's more important to them to be sitting in Congress than it is doing their jobs. I'm sorry, but that's all I can figure out.
And the money from fossil fuels helps keep them in the job.
Absolutely. I mean, they look at their constituencies, but some of them are really good people. Some of them, are basically doing what they have to do, and some of them are putting their own, jobs on the line. So it's not everyone, but it is a reflection of so the Republicans have a history of being incredibly conservative, and they've always looked at the cost of doing something without balancing that against the benefits. And everything that we have done to improve the environment, to stop pollution, to address climate change, provides a wealth of benefits far beyond how we can calculate the cost. And so if you look at it from that larger perspective, like all of us in our normal doing business as human beings look at, If they did that, then I think things would change much more quickly at a pace that climate really demands.
You know, there was a piece in the Globe this morning about them hauling sand all around Cape Cod because they're trying to preserve the beaches, and it's ridiculous because the storm comes in, the sand, they spend all this money to relocate, gets pushed out. But you put this before in the health perspective, which I think is so important. A piece by Reuters talking about indoor pollution from gas stoves in houses with poor ventilation. I think a lot of us grew up with gas stoves. You're supposed to go to those induction ovens now, I guess. But the point is, in this piece, that people who live, especially poor people who live in like a big housing development, they're dying prematurely because of this indoor pollution. Tell people about that.
Well, you know, air pollution is very insidious. So it does come from the burning of natural gas, but from lots of other ways. And it's also from your heating systems.
Yeah.
If you're heating with natural gas. You know, the bright spot is that there are alternatives now. But the challenge that we face is that most of the people most at risk are people that don't have the money to make those shifts, that don't have an ability to have their own home, make their own choices. So part of the beauty of the Inflation Reduction Act, and frankly, I know that Governor Healey's coming up, a lot of the work that they're doing is to ensure that the investments go to communities that have been left behind, to these communities that need a hand up, you know, and that need an opportunity to actually make those shifts. So that's going to be the key to how successful we are, you know, in terms of even the next election. If we can't prove to people that we are bettering their lives, that the resources that they need are going to them, that they're going to be the first in line for new jobs. If we can't figure that out, then we have failed in governance, and we will not be able to hold together. And we have to hold together. We have to have 4 more years of Joe Biden. There is no other choice, and I can't wait to see what he does next.
When you said, well, speaking of that, when you sit down with the president, when you were working there, this president, rather than Barack Obama, how did he get it, or just, is it in his bones, environmental stuff? Or, no, I mean that sincerely, as opposed to saying, this is the right thing to do, I'm going to do it, as opposed to being part of his genetic makeup, if you know what I'm trying to say.
The absolute right answer is yes, he totally gets it. And yes, it's in, not just in his bones, but it's in his heart, and it's in his head. He was annoyingly difficult to say, okay, you did this, but did you go far enough? How do you do more? When I was president and CEO of NRDC when the election happened, right? And I got a call from Joe Biden to ask if I'd be his White House climate advisor. And it was more of an interrogation than it was anything, on both sides. And I actually loved the job I had. It was more money than I've ever made in government, that's for sure. And I ended up going back in the White House because he said, Gina, we're going to treat climate change like it's the biggest health challenge that we have. We're going to do it in a way that gives families money. We're going to do it in a way that grows new clean energy jobs. We're going to use this as the new economy moving forward. I was sold. And he has never disappointed me on any one of those pieces. Every time he is asked to do as much as humanly possible, because he's a people person. He doesn't look at this as a planetary problem. You know, he sees this as the United States' ability to provide leadership here, but also to have that leadership seen internationally by other countries. And I do a lot of international work now, and they are so excited about seeing the way in which the Inflation Reduction Act has changed things dramatically and how everyone can use this. It's not a sacrifice to address climate change. It is the biggest opportunity of our lifetime.
So Gina McCarthy, for people that are listening now or watching us later on YouTube, what would you tell them that they can do in their lives, in their personal lives, and the way they live their lives at home, and politically, to try to make sure that we're not, you know, deciding in 50 years, do I want to go by flood or fire?
So that's the choice, huh?
I don't know. Sometimes I worry about that. Yeah, I do.
You know, I think they need to get active in their own communities. I think they need to read things, start listening to, you know, shows that provide incorrect information. I think
Sorry
they
about
need
Fox
to,
News?
Yeah, that's one.
Yep.
And I think they need to get excited about today. They need to grab every opportunity they have because there are many now. And they need to keep in mind what I always keep in mind. I have 5 of the most beautiful grandchildren in the world, and I am never going to stop until their world is safer, their world is healthier. That's what you have to think about, because that's what we're fighting for.
Gina McCarthy, it's great to see you, and thanks so much for your time. UMass Boston grad.
You bet.
Gina McCarthy.
UMass is my home.
Great to see you.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Gina McCarthy. She served as administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency under President Barack Obama and is the nation's first White House National Climate Advisor. She's managing co-chair of the Climate Action Coalition. America is all in, and as we've said several times, she is a Dorchester native and a UMass Boston graduate. Thank you very much, Gina McCarthy, for being with us. Up next, the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Maura Healey, is going to be here to take our questions, and yours should be with us from 1 to 2. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from UMass Boston in Dorchester. Governor Healey is next.
Back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie Egan. The governor will be here with about a minute. She's in the building. She'll join us. Is she joining us? They're surely not applauding for me. By the way, in the interim, let me tell you, we said earlier, there's that politics IRL table over there, staffed by our colleagues. And what it is Politics IRL is a video series that features young voters talking about political issues that matter to them. The project will pair 2 voters, both under 25, with different political perspectives. They meet to discuss the issues motivating them to vote and ask each other questions. The team, our coworkers, will shoot a video somewhere around Boston once a month leading up to the November election. They're here with us today to recruit UMass Boston students to the project. So if you're a UMass Boston student and interested in participating, please go there. While we're waiting for the governor, this sort of harkens back to my old days. There are a lot of people from here with signs: living wage for the Times, union solidarity, classified staff union, we will not be silenced, invest in ethnic studies. This is where my tuition goes. I think that's, they're not happy about that particular thing. And there are a lot of them here. And we welcome you and we thank you for coming to this broadcast.
Yeah.
In a couple of seconds again. And by the way, if anybody has a question for the governor, I should have said this. The place to go is that Politics IRL table that we talked about a minute ago. They'll connect you with one of our coworkers, and then if we can get to it, we'll do our best. You go to the mic, which is right there, and we'll have you on the show.
We also want to tell people, too, that we are not streaming at youtube.com/GBH News live as we usually do, but the show will be posted after this at 2 o'clock. I'm anxious to talk to the governor about the progress on the granny flats, Jim, because some of us are looking forward to.
Why don't you explain to people what a granny flat is for those that don't know?
They call them. What's the proper name for the affordable
accessory dwelling unit? ADUs.
Yeah, this is the idea. Everybody complains about how expensive it is to live around here, and it's ridiculous, and how you can't afford the rent, you can't afford the houses. There's this idea, and the legislature's got this bill now. It's from the governor.
It's part of the $4 billion housing.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you have a nice single-family house or 3-deck or whatever you got, and you got a big enough backyard, you can build an accessory dwelling in that backyard.
Up to 900 square feet.
That's right. And think about that. You could move grandmother out into the backyard
and lock her in,
and have the kids and the parents move into the house. I mean, people can't afford to sell their houses now, older people, because the interest rates are so high and they can't afford to buy anything else. So there's this kind of stuckness in the housing market. I mean, they got to hurry up and do this, and we'll see if the legislature does it in time. They have 3 months until they go on vacation.
We're going to discuss it with the governor, but the significance of this, for those who haven't been following it,
deal.
And the governor will fill in the blanks for us in a second better than we can, is if the legislature has the courage to pass this, and obviously the governor will sign it, it's her proposal, local NIMBY kinds of, she wouldn't put it this way, but I can, local elected officials could not stop these accessory dwelling units from being built. If they met the criteria in the state legislation, they would spring up, and I believe at least it would go a huge way towards addressing the affordable housing crisis in Massachusetts. So if the governor isn't here in a second, why don't I ask you the...
Oh, here she is. She's right here.
Here she is.
Governor
Joining
Maura
us
Healey.
now is the Commonwealth Governor wearing a UMass Boston vest. That'd be Maura Healey. Hello, Governor Healey. It's a pleasure to see you.
It's great to be with you both, and really, really great to be here
I know, it's
at
gorgeous.
UMass Boston. Yes. Look at all
Yeah.
these people. It's awesome.
I know.
Just saw the Chancellor, who's fantastic, tremendous leader. Gina McCarthy, what a great show.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah,
Paul
sorry
English
it's all
was
going to go
here.
downhill now.
Well, maybe it will, but you can do your best, and it'll be fine.
But
We're
you
really
know,
glad you're here, Governor.
I mean,
Thank you.
The thing of this,
You're
it's
right,
it's
sunglasses?
well, the sun is
The
really.
hell?
I know I look ridiculous.
No,
but the
I didn't say
sun-
that. I just, it just was a different
Well, actually, I'm
look.
trying to look cool, Governor, but the sun really bothers my eyes, and it's sunny out
Okay,
there, as you can
okay,
see. So
great. Oh.
that's why I got the sunglasses.
Can I make
So
a
forgive
suggestion?
me.
We didn't intend to start with this, but since we were discussing accessory dwelling units while the governor's walking in, why don't we start with the housing bond bill? Do you want to do that?
Yeah, well, tell people, I mean, we hear this all the time, that people can't afford the rent, they can't afford to buy a house, older people aren't selling their houses because with the interest rates higher, they can't move. We got a real lock on the housing market in Massachusetts. But you got this bill, this housing bill that's sitting up at the legislature, and we hate to be pessimistic. Sometimes things sit indefinitely at the legislature. We have 3 months until they end their session. But tell people about the bill and what I was talking about before, the granny flats that are part of this bill.
Now, I think the number one issue facing our state is housing. Rents are too high. People can't afford down payments. People can't afford to downsize because the prices are so high. And it is the reason that people are leaving the state. It's the reason why the fastest growing number of people leaving the state are in the 20 to 30 something age category. I mean, I don't know how many listeners have young people living at home or return from school to live at home because they can't afford to live anywhere else. So this is a problem. Massachusetts is a great state. We have so much going for us, but we also have really high housing costs. So what do we do about that? We need to build more housing. I've said that no one city or town can solve this problem on their own, that everybody needs to participate, which is why I filed a bill. It's a $4 billion bond bill. It allows us to go out and borrow money to help spark the kind of production that we need to drive prices down. One of the policy ideas that I strongly support is allowing communities to create accessory dwelling units, which is an automatic way, an easy way to quickly, overnight, add housing stock to a community. So there's a lot there. We've had a lot of good conversations with the legislature. It's already been through a couple of hearings, so you know I'm optimistic we'll get something done here. But it is really, really important. It's interesting too. You know, I talk about regular people, and I also talk about heads of companies and what they tell me, and their recruiting teams tell me. As you know, I'm really focused on life sciences and innovation and climate technology and all of that. The number one challenge for companies expanding here, growing here, settling here is their ability to attract and retain talent, and that turns on housing, they tell me. So we've got to deal with this, and I'm optimistic we can get there. It is absolutely the top priority for our state.
Are you optimistic because you're optimistic kind of person, or are you optimistic because you actually think they're going to do this in 3 months?
I think we all understand in office how pressing the needs are for families, for residents across the state. It's not just a greater Boston issue. This is a statewide, it's a national issue too.
Yep.
I talked to other governors, everybody's dealing with a high cost of housing. But you know, I think we've got a plan here that we can implement that will make a lot of sense and make a difference.
Okay, so you have to explain one thing to me. There are two provisions that I know require a little bit of courage. You would not use that word, I will, on the part of people on Beacon Hill. One is voting for these accessory dwelling unit things, because basically it makes them as of right, and their local folks back home can't stand in the way, which I know Marjorie and I think is a wonderful idea. We usually don't endorse your proposals, but we will endorse that one. The second thing that I don't understand the problem with it all is part of your deal, correct me if I'm wrong, is the real estate transfer tax on more expensive dwellings over $1 million. In light of the fact, and I might be wrong here, that doesn't require the city and town to implement that tax, but rather gives them that as an option, and then they democratically, small d, decide to do it. What is an argument against doing that?
No, I'm not really sure, because it is about local control at the end of the day. What it does is remove the extra step of having to go to the legislature and get approval for something like a transfer fee. You know, our view is let's put all the tools out there. You know, let's have a menu of options in terms of policy moves that we can make as a state, that communities can make. And that's what we did in this housing bond bill, which is called the Affordable Homes Act. And so that's one of any number of things we've suggested.
Apparently we have our first audience question with Meg, who wants to know about the high cost of childcare and universal preschool.
Welcome,
pre-K,
Meg.
excuse me, in Massachusetts.
Hi.
Hi, Meg. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, I'm an educator and a mom, and I have a question about childcare and education. I was deeply disturbed when I read the governor was perpetuating accusations against student protesters, including Jewish students, of anti-Semitism without evidence in order to justify the violent police response. Weaponizing false accusations of anti-Semitism to silence protest against genocide is dangerous and manufactures consent for violence against student protesters. It's worrisome to see our Democratic politicians and media personalities engaged in the same tactics as the far right, while ignoring the 15,000 children that have been murdered by Israeli forces.
Meg,
and
can I
many
ask you-
more
Meg, I have
facing
to ask a
extreme
question.
injury and trauma with our tax dollars and our tuition dollars.
Meg, all
My
I'm gonna ask you-
question for the
Fine,
governor
okay.
is, why are you protecting the funding of genocide over the well-being of students in the Commonwealth? And how can you claim to care about children and students if you're playing dangerous political word games instead of addressing the ongoing genocide? Thank you.
Before you answer, can I just say one thing, if I may, before the governor responds? People who want to speak to the governor do not need to lie to our staff about what you want to talk about. If you want to talk about Gaza and you tell them, you're welcome on the show. If you want to talk about childcare, you're welcome on the show, but please don't lie to our coworkers about why you want to be here. Meg, you're done.
I'm sorry,
Thank you.
the care
You
of
made your point.
children is why I'm here.
Okay,
Sorry,
fine.
child care,
Okay,
care
got
of
it.
children,
Thank you, Meg.
very similar
You asked
things.
the question. Thank you. Governor.
Well, there's a lot there. Let me start with childcare. And you know, one thing that I've been clear about and our administration has been clear about is that childcare is actually an economic underpinning. Okay? If we want economic growth and development, we want people, particularly women, back in the workplace, we have got to solve the high cost, the challenge of childcare. And so one of the things that we've done is last year and again this year in our budget, we are looking to provide historic levels of funding to continue the funding that the federal government gave us through the COVID years, to continue that level of funding so that we can open up and have more child care providers in place around the state, so that we can raise the salaries for child care providers, including some who are educated here at the great University of Massachusetts Boston, so that we have more seats available, so that more families are able to send their kids to child care and go to work and go about their lives. So it's really, really important to us as an administration. We recognize how important childcare is. The other thing with that is we recognize how important education is for our littlest learners. And that is why we have proposed that we will make universal pre-K available to every 4-year-old in the state. We're starting in every gateway city by 2026. It is so, so important. Massachusetts, you know, we're proud that we're home to the first public school in the country, the first public library in the country. We want to be first in education, and that starts with our littlest learners, and we've got to help our families. You know, I know so many women. I ran the AG's office. I now run a little bit larger outfit. You know, so many families are having to do a calculus at home. Do I go to work, right? Or is it cheaper for me and my family for me to stay home? That holds us back. It holds back our GDP. So we've got to deal with that, and I think that childcare is so, so important. And again, I've met a lot of folks who've been educated here at the University of Massachusetts in early education and childcare, and I appreciate that, and we want to support those providers, support those educators, and most importantly, support the children.
How about the other issue that was raised by Meg about the protesters, the arrests, the situation in Gaza?
Well, I think anyone with a heart sees the grief, sees the agony, sees the devastation, and feels for those who have been killed in Gaza, those who have been killed in Israel. It is incredibly agonizing and upsetting. It's also the case that we as a country, we as a people, as a state, and as a community, and I as your governor am committed, as I was as head of the Civil Rights Division and your Attorney General, to fighting anti-Semitism, to fighting Islamophobia, to fighting racism, hatred, bigotry in all forms. I'll also say that we have a right to protest in this country, including on college campuses. It is also the case that there's a difference between protest and violence and threats of violence and disruption of students' access to safe education. That's what I have to say about this, and I will continue to speak with people who have differing views. It's important that we engage in a civil way and debate and have discourse and have discussion in this country about policies. That's really important. That's who we are as Americans. Governor, it's also the case that some of what we are witnessing does not represent that, does not reflect that. And that will continue to be my position as governor. Again, I am focused on ensuring the safety of all involved, whether it's on campuses or elsewhere, and certainly pray for peace and pray for a greater understanding and greater dialogue in this time.
Governor, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Ed Markey, Bernie Sanders, a lot of others think that President Biden should have put conditions on the funding of military equipment going to Israel, that he shouldn't be just writing a check and letting Netanyahu decide how to use it. Do you think Biden should have set these conditions?
I think the president's been clear in calling for a ceasefire, something that I support. I think it's also clear that we should continue to support Israel with that funding.
Last
no
question.
Conditions, no conditions?
I think the president has been clear with Israel and the prime minister about what should happen.
Last question on this, and then we'll get to the calls at 877-301-8970. Are you comfortable with how the police were used at Northeastern and Emerson?
Yes.
You are. Let's go to Ellie in Medford. Ellie in Medford, you are next. You're on. The governor answered your question, I thought, pretty respectfully, and we'd like to go to Ellie from Medford, who is on the phone at 877-301-8970. Ellie, welcome. You're on with the governor.
This is Emily from Medford.
Oh, Emily, I'm so sorry. My fault. Hi, Emily.
No problem. I had a question for the governor. My husband is a healthcare worker who is currently working for Steward Healthcare, and we found out this week that his clinic is laying off and closing at the end of the month. With no buyout from a physician group or anything like that. I wanted to know if the state had anything planned or programs that were available that are going to be helping the healthcare workers that are going to be affected by all of these hospitals and clinics closing.
Absolutely. And Emily, thank you so much for calling. Where does your husband work?
He works at a physical therapy.
A steward. Okay.
A steward.
Got it. So, Emily, thank you for your question. And as folks know, we have this hospital system, Steward Healthcare, 8 hospitals around the state, big physician groups in a lot of places. And basically, their CEO and their management team, which is out of Dallas, Texas, played really fast and loose and did things that were totally irresponsible and have put at risk those hospitals and patients and jobs and the like. So we have been on this now for weeks, for months. In fact, my Secretary of Health and Human Services has led the effort on this. And I've said from the outset, and Emily, this is to you and to your husband, our focus is on protecting patients and their access to care, protecting jobs. We've got 16,000 jobs like your husband's at risk, and protecting the stability of the healthcare market. I announced yesterday that we set up an incident command team. What we've been doing is going around with our Department of Public Health, which, by the way, is on site at all these hospitals, monitoring, because we want to ensure safe, quality care there. But we've been doing a series of regional planning meetings to talk with communities affected, to talk with other hospital systems, to make sure that we've got the right contingency plans in place so that patients are assured coverage, and also ultimately so that we know where workers are going to go. We're looking at a situation where Steward will be exiting Massachusetts, which is a very good thing. based on their completely unscrupulous behavior. And I'm not talking about steward doctors or nurses or administrators here in Massachusetts. I'm talking about management and their CEO, who we know, you've covered it, two yachts and everything else. So great, get them out of town. But in the meantime, it's like, how do you manage that orderly transition? Who's going to come in and take over? What is that going to look like? And it's something that we are committed to making sure that we manage as thoughtfully as possible, and that we work with our network of existing other hospital providers and other physician networks to make sure, again, that patients are covered, that workers are protected, and that the stability of the market is in place. And Emily, I will make sure, if you leave your number with the folks here at the studio, I'll make sure that you're connected to the right person at our Department of Public Health.
Emily, stay on the line. Our producers will get your contact information.
We certainly need your husband to continue work. As we know, healthcare is just another area where we've got real workforce challenges. And again, I was here at the nursing school not too long ago, another great program out of UMass Boston. We have so many, I say that my mom's a nurse and my grandmother too. We love our nurses, but across healthcare, we need people to continue to go into this and to help us fill this workforce. And certainly there's no shortage of jobs and opportunities right now.
Very quick, Emily, stay on hold. We have very quick. We got an email this morning. I don't know enough about the bankruptcy stuff and what your secretary is doing on these things. I know how much you're focused on it. Could we wake up tomorrow morning and find these hospitals closed?
No. No. The way it works in this kind of situation is there's a whole process for managing these transitions, including in the event of bankruptcy, in the event that they stop paying their bills. It's not easy, Jim. It's a challenge, and that's why it's really galling to me that a bunch of, a selfish CEO did what he did and sucked money out of what are important, imperative community assets, right? Access to health care. Remember, this is an outfit, Stewart, that came in years ago and bought the Caritas Christi hospital system that was on hard times, and then took over a bunch of these hospitals. And again, I have a lot of respect for the people working in these hospitals and support them, including the management teams. But they've just been dealt a really lousy hand, and so has the Commonwealth. But we'll work through it.
I said one last thing, but there is one last thing. I know we asked this question a couple of months ago, but I think, obviously, I assume there's been more thought put into it by you and the Attorney General. Not only has Ralph Della Torre taken out hundreds of millions of dollars from this business, the CEO, who started here and has bought yachts with it and all that sort of thing.
90-foot fishing boat, too.
Right. At the same time, we read the unbelievably painful story in the Boston Globe about a woman whose condition was totally able to be addressed, but the equipment that was needed to save her life was repossessed because Stewart hadn't paid its bills. Margaret and I, and even though I'm allegedly a lawyer, but not much of one, if there's ever a criminal behavior, it seems to me it's that. Is that being looked into at all? Whether or not there was criminality on the part of Stewart or any other leaders?
I can't speak to that. What I can say is that it's an example of the kind of gross behavior that's gone on and what that's resulted in. I mean, stiffing suppliers and vendors, and then, that means that hospitals don't have the right supplies or the needed supplies in certain instances, and with a potentially tragic outcome, right? I mean, it matters under investigation. But,
okay.
Governor, we were talking when we first got here about whether people thought college was worth it because it's become so expensive to go to college now, even UMass. I got some text messages about the tuition going up here as well. You, correct me if I'm wrong, but the basic thing is you basically said for a lot of jobs in state government, you're not going to need a college degree anymore. It's going to be a skill-based hiring process. Tell people about that.
Well, let me say a couple things. I do think college is wonderful, and I support our colleges and universities. We're lucky to have so many incredible public and private institutions here in Massachusetts. It's also the case that there are a lot of ways to develop and get yourself into a terrific career. And it's, why we've supported all sorts of vocational programs. It's why we've supported career pathways in high school that enable high school students to actually, while going to high school, learn a job or a skill for advanced manufacturing or robotics or another field that they could then go to right after high school. So I think it's not an either or, it's a both and that's what we had got the benefit of doing here in Massachusetts. Now, one of the things we did, and I'm proud this year of being able to do it, is to make community college free to anybody who's 25 and older. I know, wow, right? But it matters. If you know anybody 25 and older that maybe started with some credits but had to leave because somebody got sick or, you know, something happened in their life that took them off that trajectory, now's the time. You can go back and finish out, get that degree for free in a way that's going to set you up for jobs that we need filled today. So I think that's important, and I think you know, making sure that we have a full array of offerings to people is really important as well.
John from Peabody has a related question. John, welcome to the show. You're on with Maura Healey. Welcome.
Hi, Joe and Marjorie, and thank you for taking my call. Governor,
sure.
Thank you for your time. Both of my kids graduated from Essex Technical High School in Danvers, and I'm on the advisory board there. And one of the big issues is the kids are going out on co-op, working for nurseries and landscapers and so forth. That's the program. I was involved in the landscape program. And they can't get training on equipment like bobcats and excavators and so forth because they cannot get a hoisting or hydraulics license until they're 18. And farms, is my understanding, are exempt, yet this agricultural high school is not, and they can't get the real-world experience without it. And we have brand-new equipment that the school has procured, and the kids can't even practice on it. It's my understanding there may be a bill addressing this, but I'm not sure, and I was just wondering if there's something that can be done to alleviate this problem.
Thank you, John.
John, thanks for the call. You know, John, my grandfather graduated from what was then Essex Aggie. So I love, yeah, and I've been back. It's a very different school. They have than it was when he was there. The beautiful campus, a great example of one of our terrific high schools here in Massachusetts. So I don't know what that legislation is, John, but I certainly understand the rationale behind it. As somebody who grew up on a farm in New Hampshire, I understand a little bit about what you're speaking to. And it goes to the point of how do we set kids up for success? How are we making sure that they are, of course, safely, but, you know, given the skills, given the training, given the tools to set them up for the career that they want to have. So we'll look into that, John. And meanwhile, I wish both your sons well.
We have a recent UMass Boston grad, I think you should applaud that, whose name is Jules, who is ready to ask a question of the governor. Jules, welcome and congratulations.
Hey, Jim. Hey, Marjorie.
Hey.
Thank you, Governor, for being here. And I got a couple questions on housing and transportation, hoping for 200, 300 level answers in a short time. If you want a deluxe monologue, it's available. But on housing and the MBTA Communities Act, we know where that is in terms of legalities right now, Milton, Wakefield. I know your position, I know you're confident in it, and the administration. If the SJC doesn't find in your favor, what contingencies do you have, if you have any, to keep participating municipalities in the round? Or is there even a plan B? And then on transportation, we can go back a few weeks, because it's been echoing for a few weeks, just as I can hear my echo right now, trying to coordinate myself. But this Transportation Secretary, those comments about the border tolls, I mean, we have a question from David that was asked here about why you haven't fired her or asked for the resignation for the way that she went about it. It was very straightforward. I think
if I may, Jules, I think 2 is probably plenty. Is that okay with you? Thank you. Could you do me a favor? Thank you, Jules. Would you mind explaining what the MBTA communities thing is that Jules was talking about, in case people don't know before you respond?
I appreciate it. Sure, absolutely. And thanks, Jules.
Thank you, Jules.
Nice to see you. So the MBTA Communities Act is a law that was passed nearly unanimously by our legislature a few years ago, signed into law by then Governor Baker. And what it did is it required approximately 177 communities to basically undertake a planning rezoning process, and it's tiered according to their proximity to transit hubs. But basically the idea was we need more housing. They decided to pass a law that basically gets communities to rezone to create more housing in a community. And again, this was passed unanimously and signed into law a few years ago. it has been now in the process of being implemented, and communities have to come forward with their plan, and some have chosen, not some, but very few have chosen not to, have chosen to fight. Of course, Milton being probably the lead case where the Attorney General has said that she is going to enforce the law, which I support. Well, of course, also continuing to work with the town of Milton on a new plan. That's the role of our administration. We'll continue to be at the table and try to help them work through these issues. But the good news, Jules, is for Plan B, you know, communities are doing this already. The vast majority of communities have already taken action to adopt and will now be implementing the MBTA communities law. And I think this isn't surprising to me because, you know, anywhere you go, housing costs are high. And I think that most people out there know that we need more housing in the state in order to bring down rents, to bring down costs. And so there's a way to do it. The law allows flexibility to communities in terms of how you rezone it. And our administration will continue to offer technical assistance. We gave Milton $60,000 in technical assistance to help them draw their plan. So we're hopeful that that will still work out there. But you know, I think the good news is the vast majority of communities have already adopted this and are implementing. And that makes sense because I said at the outset, no one of our 351 cities or towns can solve the housing issue on their own. Like everybody's got to participate. Everybody's got to give. Everybody's got to make this work. And we don't want people leaving the state. See, that's the other thing, right? We all want economic growth. We all want prosperity. We want more opportunity. The only way we get that is if we continue to build vibrancy. If we have people leaving the state because they can't afford to live here, that's a problem for our economic growth and development and who we are and what your kids are going to inherit, what your grandkids are going to inherit for opportunity or not here in our great state. So that's why we're doing it. Okay?
How about Jules' question about your Secretary of Transportation suggesting that border tolls on the way to New Hampshire might be a way to go? You weren't happy, apparently.
Well, as I expressed, I had a different view on that. I grew up on the border, as I say, in New Hampshire, so I oppose tolls on the border. I support my Secretary of Transportation and the work that she and our Department of Transportation are doing. In fact, today, you know, I stood with her and others as we were giving out it's like $400 million in money for roads and bridges and infrastructure, important work that communities need to do. But I already addressed the Secretary's comments on that, which I strongly disagreed with.
But you know, may I ask you one thing about that? I mean, we have people that come in to Boston to work on the Mass Pike every day, and they have to pay a toll. People come in from New Hampshire to work in Massachusetts or work in Boston. Why is it, when we have this huge problem with funding the T, why is it just missed out of hand, tolls from New Hampshire? They're getting a lot of benefit by working in Boston and not paying Massachusetts prices.
You know, I think that when it comes to revenues and financing of transportation and what our needs are, a few things need to happen. One of the things is I set up a task force to look at this issue, to look at what is it that we need to do in our transportation system and how are we going to pay for it? What are the existing revenue streams that we have? And then what are other options, menu of options, of tools that policymakers could consider? And so those ideas, toolkit, recommendations, they'll come to me later this year. I've asked for them by the end of the year. So we'll see what this diverse group of stakeholders has to say when it comes to financing.
That's the last question before we take a break that maybe Jules was going to. Well, the thing that surprised me about your rejecting out of hand what the Secretary had suggested is you appointed this task force. Maybe the task force is going to come to you, Governor, and say, I think there should be tolls on the border, and here are the 42 reasons why it's a great idea. Are you saying they shouldn't even contemplate that?
I'm just speaking as me.
Okay.
Little old me as governor. That was my view.
Little
as I sit here
governor.
today, you know, look, I'm trying to drive affordability, making Massachusetts more competitive, making us more equitable, right? So tolls at the border are not on my agenda. You know, the financing task force will see what they come forward with. I thought it was important to set that up, and as I say, we've got a diverse group of stakeholders, and thoughtful people on there, so we'll see what they come forward with, Jim.
That's the voice of the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Maura Healey. She's going to be with us to the top of the hour. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from UMass Boston in Dorchester. If you want to reach us by phone or text, the number's 877-301-8970, or you can come down here to the homie mic at UMass Boston and ask the Governor a question yourself. Be right back.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Next year, Boston will host its first public art triennial, turning city streets into an outdoor museum and featuring 15 commissions from local, national, and international artists. Plus, we'll look at the Tony nominations, and in the battle of Kendrick Lamar versus Drake, Lamar escalates the feud, dropping his diss track, Euphoria. That's today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And North Shore Music Theater. Audiences can experience the true story and musical journey of Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons. Jersey Boys comes to Bill Haney's North Shore Music Theater May 7th through May 19th. Tickets at nsmt.org. And Music Worcester, presenting Tessa Lark and Frank Vignola, performing an evening recalling the infectious hot club sounds of Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli. Saturday, May 18th at Tuckerman Hall. Tickets at musicworcester.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are live at UMass Boston. We thank UMass Boston and the Chancellor for inviting us today. Joining us till the top of the hour and the end of the show is the Governor of the Commonwealth. If you want to, well, the lines are full. If you want to text her, it's 877-301-8970, Marjorie.
Let us go to Sarah in Millis. Thank you for calling, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
I call. I'm calling because I'm sure the governor is aware that during the last year of the Baker administration, he raised out of district tuition sped costs by 14%, which was mandated to all cities and towns. And it went up again another 2% this year. However, circuit breaker reimbursement and money provided by the state to towns that aren't gateway towns who don't have a lot of commercial business they're really struggling. And currently right now, Millis has a deficit of $1 million. We're faced with the either passing a Proposition 2.5 override to the taxpayers or laying off 15 full-time employees with the school. So I'm just wondering if the governor has anything in her budget or considered to up the reimbursement costs to cities and towns in order to maintain the teachers and education level that we have in the towns that aren't getting the additional money for being gateway town or high commercial business.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. Sarah, thanks so much for the call. And that's something that the Lieutenant Governor and I have heard from a number of communities about. And, again, we're all experiencing this moment of higher costs, higher prices, inflation, things have gone up. And, it's something that we recognize right now. And we have some formulas that may or may not work for certain communities, and that includes the education funding formula. I'll tell you this, Sarah, we are really focused on it. We did some things this year. There's a municipal reform law that we proposed, and we're going to continue to look at ways that we can work with and help our municipalities and our communities. We do make sure that with the money coming in from the surtax, that it is going to go according to the voters' wishes for education and for transportation, and that's why we were able to propose historic levels of funding for education in the past year and significant levels this year as well. So I completely appreciate what Sarah is saying and identifying as an issue. There's a lot more pinch and hurt on these communities right now, and we've got to find a way to all work together and work through this.
Can you spend 60 seconds and tell us about this Climate Bank home loan thing and who's eligible and how it works, if you can?
Yeah, climate, as you know, we are all in on climate. Going to the Vatican later this month to talk about some of our initiatives. My economic development bill leans heavily into climate technology as the next big, great investment for our state. One of the other things that we did under the leadership of Chief Hoffer, our climate chief, Countries First, who I know you had on a couple weeks ago,
we did indeed,
is to create a climate bank. And this is the country's very first green bank that is dedicated solely towards affordable housing. This week, we launched our first consumer product, and what it does right now is allow for low and moderate income homeowners to apply for loans to make their homes more energy efficient, to make upgrades at a lower cost. So that's really great, really cool. You're going to be able to do things like take out a loan that will help you replace your roof, install heat pumps, weatherize your home, install solar panels, and the like. It's administered through Mass Housing, and it's a great program that is out there. Also includes purchasing battery storage or EV charging stations. You can head over to massclimatebank.com to learn more about this and to apply. We've allocated $20 million for this program with a goal of committing up to 1,000 loans over the next 2 years.
Thanks.
You know, Governor, we're getting a lot of texts about the migrant crisis. There's been a lot of people from out of the country who've moved here from their countries. This is happening all over the United States. Most of them are about how you're going to deal with the cost of sustaining the migrants here. Unsustainable, says one texter. Will you limit services to migrants, raise taxes, or cut other state services?
Yep. We've talked about this before. This is a challenge. It's a challenge that Massachusetts is dealing with. It's not a challenge that Massachusetts created. It is something created because of an inaction by the federal government and particularly by Congress on this issue. And it's also the product of some really troubling geopolitical forces that are causing people to flee countries in Central and South America and places like Haiti right now that are ravaged by war and all sorts of things going on that are just causing people to leave with their kids and literally risk their lives to try to find some measure of safety. They're coming across in numbers that we haven't seen before. I've spoken about this before. You know, there was a deal 3 months ago now on the table in Congress. It was going to reform some of the border policies. It was going to make some changes to the asylum process. It was going to provide more assets and agents and resources to strengthen security at the border. And it was also going to provide funding to states like Massachusetts, who've had to deal with housing the number of new immigrants into our states. As we know, that bill was sealed, delivered, ready to go, except that Donald Trump said there shall be no deal before the election, and then everybody, the Republicans, walked away. It's a damn shame. It really is. But we are where we are, and we're managing the situation as best we can. Just for clarity out there for the public, we talk about the high price tag for what's called our emergency shelter system, our housing system here in the state. I want people to understand that more than half of the families who are in that emergency shelter system are not immigrant families, are not migrant families. They're actually Massachusetts families who've fallen on hard times and have needed, you know, with the cost of housing going up, have needed emergency shelter. So over half of those families that we're paying for are Massachusetts families. Now, one thing I've been really focused on is making clear that we've reached capacity here. It's why I put and imposed a wait list many months ago on this and a cap on our emergency shelter system for new immigrants into Massachusetts. It's also why I have focused on getting people working. We are the only state to have processed the number of people for work authorizations that we have processed. Over 3,600 people have been processed, of approximately 7,500 adults who've entered Massachusetts as immigrants. 3,600 of them have been processed. Nearly all of them have gotten work authorizations. They're here lawfully. They're able to work, and we're focused on getting them plugged in to employers as we speak. And hundreds and hundreds of people are now at work as a result. So, you know, that's how I'm trying to manage the situation. And, you know, I continue to call on the federal government to act and to take the steps that they need to take.
You know, speaking of calling on the federal government and the migrant situation, we had Marcelo Garcia from the Globe editorial page on the other day, and she had written a piece about how she believed the president should extend, which he has the power to do, temporary protected status for Haitian immigrants who are already here in this country, so they're not at risk to deportation, particularly if they're from Port-au-Prince, to really dangerous place. He has yet to do that. Do you support the extension of TPS for Haitians who are here?
You know, it's interesting because, you know, my focus as governor has been how do you take care of and fulfill your legal obligation as a right to shelter state to care for the people who are here, who have come. And that's why I'm so focused on getting people working, getting people housing. You get people working, they're going to be able to better afford and get into housing. It's also why I've really leaned into community organizations, service providers, churches, faith leaders, right, who have taken families in. I mean, we really need that. We need that help. So that's really been my focus, and not, you know, not on what that means in terms of status. The numbers that we have here right now, remember, these people are here lawfully. They've been allowed in, they're here lawfully, and they're just really, really high numbers.
You know, one other thing we're getting a lot in the text today, and people talk about this in terms of the granny flats or whatever the proper name. What do they call them?
Accessory dwelling.
Accessory dwelling. That's right.
ADUs.
Yeah, people are worried that what's going to happen is investors are going to buy these houses and they're going to rent out the ADUs. And then several people are asking whether there's anything to be done about investors buying up homes, period, and causing the cost of housing to skyrocket.
I'm not worried about that. I mean, right now, look at downtown Boston. Investors are already buying up. They're the only ones who can afford housing. What ADUs do is allow you as a homeowner in your community to go out and turn that garage into an additional apartment that you can rent out, that you can have a family member live in, that you can put your mother-in-law and your father-in-law in, right? That's what ADUs do. So let's not confuse the situation. I mean, that's what this is about.
Okay.
And, you know, back on part of the situation with a number of Massachusetts families in our shelter system right now, and I understand it's hard. I mean, taxpayers, we pay for this. There's a law in our state that requires us to cover families in this situation. We don't have housing to move them to. We don't have apartments that are affordable enough. Even when we have vouchers, there just aren't enough of them. We just don't have enough housing stock. And so for me, so much of this, it all comes back to housing.
You should be a little more forthcoming. The reason Marjorie brought it up, she's convinced, she's hoping her kids are going to put her in an ADU rather than on a piece of ice and push her out to sea.
But you know that,
Can we?
okay, go ahead.
Let's go to Alexa, who is a staff member here at UMass Boston. She's got a question for the governor, Maura Healey. Alexa, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So like Jim said, my name is Alexa McPherson. I'm the current president of the Classified Staff Union. And with you being a public sector graduate, one of the big things is that you likely know through your education that staff are vital to the mission of public higher education. And so I have a few friends here. And so with that in mind, though, our working conditions are getting worse and worse, suffering severe pay cuts, job cuts, unfair, unequal pay and benefits between different unions and collective bargaining units, not just within this own campus, but as a whole across higher education. So focusing on that, it's making it impossible for many workers to live in the community that they work in. Like in my unit, for example, the lowest paid wage earner makes $50,005 before taxes, before the exorbitant health care costs are taken out, and that is just not a livable wage in this time, in this city, in this state
Alexa,
as a whole.
Can you ask the question you have for the
yes.
governor, if you don't mind? Thank you.
Yep. So with that in mind, since you control the collective bargaining unit, and between you and your cabinet, you have offered us pretty good raises over the last year going into next round. What are you willing to do for us, given the incredible inflation rates we're all suffering, to bring us even higher up and really give us a living, equitable wage for these times right now that we are all suffering through.
Thanks, Alexa.
Thanks, Alexa. I'll tell you, one thing I'm going to do is work to make sure we pass that housing bond bill, because one of the things we need to cut are your costs around housing right now, and bring down the cost of rent, bring down the cost of housing. We did do something that hadn't been done in many, many, many years. We actually did a significant wage increase with all of our unions last year.
And we're thankful for that.
No, and I appreciate that, and that was bargained in good faith, and we know how important wages are, and all of our public employees deserve, Alexa, livable wages. It's also the case that we're struggling right now with a revenue picture. We're working through that. But I hear you. We'll continue to bargain in good faith with all of our unions. We have to watch what the revenue picture looks like. In the meantime, it's important to me that we do what we can to make sure that we're driving down the cost of childcare, driving down the cost of housing, driving down the costs of education generally. And that's why, something that will allow people to go back community college for free, maybe to get them into a position that, pays a little bit more. All these things are pieces of it. I understand, Alexa, it's never going to be enough or fast enough, but know that we're committed to trying to do all we can to support our public employees.
Alexa, thank you for your
Thank
questions.
you.
Really appreciate it.
Governor, when you say fast enough, I don't get that there's a sense of urgency in the legislature. This bond bill's been there for I don't know how long, quite a while now. I was reading one of these stories this morning. It's small, but it's significant, that 200 some extra houses could be added up at Fort Devens, and that's not happening because it has to go through some procedure or okay or something like that. It doesn't seem like there's urgency. Why should it take them another 3 months to get this thing out of there up on Beacon Hill?
Well, look, I just look back at the last year and the things that we were able to do. The budget that we were able to pass, Mass Reconnect with Free Community College, universal school meals. We were able to get a lot done over the last year. And, right now these things are moving. They're in conference. I know the housing bond bill is in conference. I've got a hearing on the economic development bill that I filed next week. Looking forward to that. As I say, I'm really leaning into making Massachusetts the global hub of climate technology, just like we did for life sciences. We're poised to be the global hub for climate technology. We've got companies here. We've got the research here. Everything sort of here to help grow the companies that are going to be responsible for decarbonization and for climate mitigation. So, for me, I'm really pleased to see that that's getting a hearing next week. And, we're going to continue to work with our legislative partners and leadership on moving the ball forward for all of Massachusetts.
Governor, I know you we talked to you about a lot on a tax cut, which you achieved. It's one of the other things you got in your first term.
Oh, yeah, we got that done too. First time in 20 years, Jim.
But do you, well, I don't know how well this question is going to go over. Do you regret that at all? I mean, we've had revenue decline issues. There had to be some cutting of the budget. Luckily, the voters approved the millionaire's tax, or whatever you want to call it, without which we'd be in real trouble. But would it not have been better to have waited a little bit and seen what the fiscal situation was?
No.
Why not?
No, because first of all, that everything was paid for in what we did last year in the budget, long before the cut. And I'll tell you that cutting taxes, it means a lot. This year, because we cut taxes, seniors got an additional $1,200. It went from $1,200 to $2,400 on the senior circuit tax breaker. That's a big deal. So I don't regret helping seniors, I don't regret that tax cut meant that Massachusetts has the most generous child and family tax credit in the entire country. That helps a lot of families, right? And lower income families. So that's really important. I'm glad that we cut the estate tax some, that we cut capital gains some. These are important because, again, though I grew up there, I don't want people moving to New Hampshire. So these are things that we needed to do. We do have additional money coming in through the surtax. We made good use of it this year and kept a true promise to the voters, which is to make sure that money is going for transportation and education. And we'll continue to make sure that's the case. But, it is always the case, Jim, that we've got to manage, the House fiscally and I don't mean the House of Representatives. I mean manage our proverbial house and our budget, and that's what we're working to do. With the spending decisions that we're making. I also want to distinguish, though, between something like a housing bond bill or economic development bond bill, which are not budget expenses. They are investments. They are vehicles that allow us to use our great bond rating, credit rating right now, to go out and borrow money to make the investments that we need to make. I'm proposing a $1.3 billion investment in climate technology. Why? Because we just had a report done by the Donahue Institute at UMass, which showed that if Massachusetts, if we make this investment in climate technology to help these companies, to help these entrepreneurs, to help our research institutions, we are going to see a $16 billion return, more than $16 billion return. That's a 12-to-1 return on investment for that, and that's a pretty good return. So, you know, that's use of bond money and an investment versus some of the expenses that we're talking through when we're talking about a budget.
We only have 30 seconds left. 30. How do you react to the Republican candidate for governor taking the lowest of low roads and tweeting, unlike the Massachusetts governor, "I don't tolerate soft on crime policies"? That'd be Kelly Ayotte.
I didn't see that. What?
Well, she said it.
I don't know. I was
Unlike the Massachusetts governor, I don't tolerate soft on crime. She's running against you more than she's running against.
I know, it's kind of
the
interesting because
Democratic
I'm not running in New Hampshire. I'm just trying to run the state to the best of my ability. What I will say is I was as you know, I was a prosecutor and I was for 8 years an attorney general pursuing criminal charges and you know, taking action for a good number of years. So that's just, it doesn't make any sense to me on its face.
Nice to see you, Governor Healey. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. By the way, for New Hampshire, that race is important. And if you don't want to be a state like Florida right now with extreme abortion laws, you better get out and vote for the Democrat in New Hampshire in this gubernatorial election, because abortion and democracy, so much is on the line.
Thank you very much, Governor Maura Healey, and thank you all for listening to another edition
I think
of Boston
Kelly
Public Radio.
supports the abortion bans, as far as I know,
people
too.
that came down here from UMass Boston. We want to thank the GBH team that helped pull this whole thing together. Glenn Heath, Howard Powell, Matthew Glover, Chris Kelly, Angelica Marrero, Maddie Geyer, Eddie Hickey, John Polonsky, Phil Riley, Terry Quinn, Cindy Toy, Emily Bach, Jacqueline Kelleher, Aaron Callahan, Alexi Cohen, Annie Schreffler, Megan Hershey, and Azita Garamani. We also thank our crew here: Zoe Matthews, Aiden Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer John Viclaw Parker, and our executive producer Jamie Bologna. And special thanks to our host here at UMass Boston, Chancellor Marcelo Suárez-Orozco and his team. I am Marjorie Egan.
Thank you all for coming, by the way. We really appreciate it. Hope we do it again. And I'm Jim Browdy.
Yep, and stay tuned for the Culture Show right after us, and hope you have a great weekend and can tune in again on Monday. Bye.